Lee Yo-woon is your typical office worker, or so it seems. By day, he's professional in the office, but by night, he's a serious MMO gamer. His boss would one day catch him messaging his friend in the game, and to Yo-woon's surprise, his boss is totally supportive of his relationship. But what the boss doesn't know was that his friend was a guy, an annoying one at that, who was always flirting with him and acting zesty. In the heat of midsummer, Yo-woon sat in the office with a broken air conditioner, sweaty and irritated. He complains about his boss not fixing the AC. He deposits 30,000 won into his bye-bye boss savings account out of impulse. He skipped lunch. The heat was so bad, it gave him a stomachache. His heart was desperate to go home and quit his job. He notices a message from client. They sent him an emoticon. He's bored enough to respond back. Are you sleeping? Thinking about it more, Yo-woon wonders if it's that day already. He bet his friend in the game whether or not the air conditioner in his office would get fixed within a week. Loser grants the winner's wish. Today was the last day, and even though Yo-woon wanted the AC to be fixed, he also didn't so he could win. His boss startles him, and luckily, Yo-woon closes the tab within 0.4 seconds. Thank goodness he didn't see Yo-woon conversing with his friends about his boss assassination account. The boss excitedly points to the fact Yo-woon started dating. He's seen him gathering his things and leaving work as soon as it was over these days. But Yo-woon denies it. At 28 years old, he did not have a lover. Why was he so quick to leave? It's because his hobby was playing MMORPGs. He's Korean, so it's gotta be a MapleStory clone. At work though, nobody knew. So he presented like a typical office worker. Suddenly, he'd get a ping from client reading, "Jigu is awake." His boss became quizzical. What client was this? And the two read the messages which read, "I just woke up. I don't have class today, so I slept in." The boss could see this was a college student. Yo-woon desperately wanted him to stop texting, but it got worse with the next messages reading, "Your AC still hasn't been fixed? Honey, that's terrible. My place has AC on full power. Wanna come over?" The boss became ecstatic. He thought there was no reason for Yo-woon to hide it, and dipped out, saying, "Feels good to be young, eh?" Yo-woon wouldn't be mad if it was actually his girlfriend. Unfortunately for him, Jigu is a younger guy he met online who's been persistent about meeting up in person. So he dealt with the situation by making a bet for a wish that was heavily in his favor. But with the way people see it, he believed people who meet online should stay online. He worried Jigu might want to sell his organs or force him to join a cult. He told Jigu to stop texting him, stop calling him baby and honey. People might start thinking they were dating, but Jigu only responded, "I'm hurt. Honey, is what we have a joke to you? I'm breaking up with you." He really knew how to get under Yo-woon's skin. Being annoyed wouldn't stop Yo-woon's vision from going blurry from the heat. But he was saved by the repairman entering in like an angel. Everyone in the office was excited, including Yo-woon, until Jigu replied, "Hyung, you remember the bet we made?" A year ago, Yo-woon had become bored with the games he'd been playing. After trying so many, he finally felt like he had found a game he liked. But it turned out to be the trashiest and worst game he's ever played. Soon after, he comes across a game called Illusion Online. Since he was still not employed, he gave it a try. He named his character and being an unemployed bum, he somehow managed to hit level 50 in a single day. It was hard to progress in Illusion without hunting monsters, and the higher your level, the harder it was to farm monsters without a guild. In the beginning, Yo-woon joined a guild and managed to complete his first class upgrade, but the guild soon became inactive. With his second class upgrade coming soon, he went searching for another. He came across the Poseidon Guild and was immediately accepted. Jigu, whose in-game name is G9 Star, immediately rushed to see who had joined their guild. Staring at him, he questioned why Yo-woon was so weak. Anyway, Yo-woon forgot to read the party description. Apparently, you need to be at least level 200 to join, and he was still at 120. He tries to negotiate, stating that he hit level 50 in a single day, but suddenly, Jigu accuses him of following him. Before Yo-woon can even process what's happening, he gets killed by the other guild members. Jigu said the first to kill him gets 100 mil. What did he even do wrong? Yo-woon explains that there's been a misunderstanding, but Jigu doesn't buy it, and he manages to get on Yo-woon's nerves. Since Jigu couldn't be reasoned with, Yoon decides to leave the party. Just as he was about to, the actual guild leader told him to wait. However, he didn't want to be in this guild anymore. When he next respawned, Jigu dashed toward him and killed him again. Before Yoon respawned again, Jigu begged him to talk to his guild leader and clear up the misunderstanding because he'd been demoted. Because of what Jigu did, the guild leader thought he was a scumbag. Yoon ignored him and went ahead to respawn at the stone tower, but Jigu kept following him around like a clingy brat. As if that wasn't enough, he started spamming friend requests, as Yoon rejected each one. Jigu offered to stop following him if he told the guild leader that he accepted his apology, but Yoon saw no reason to do that. So, Jigu started throwing a tantrum. Fed up with this annoying guy, he logged off the game. The next day, he logged on and received a message from Jigu, apologizing for his actions and for killing him. He also offered to be a good friend. Reading between the lines, Yoon noticed the real message that read, "I'm not sorry, lol." This guy really pissed him off. The leader of Poseidon Guild then sent Yoon a message, apologizing on Jigu's behalf. He explained they'd been getting new users who wanted to be unreasonably carried. When the guild refused, these new people started writing hate speech, and even went so far as to dox personal information of high-ranking guild members. Yoon now understood why Jigu thought he was a stalker. It still didn't excuse that subtle message, so he told the guild leader about the "I'm not sorry" lol message Jigu left him. Shortly after, Jigu came complaining about the scolding he received from the guildmaster, but Yoon played dumb. Then, out of nowhere, Jigu got on his knees and proposed to him. Yeah, this guy's definitely a nut job. He even got the other members of Poseidon Guild to witness this. Of course, Yoon rejected him, but it wouldn't end there. It was quite shocking for him to hear that the ring cost 4,900 won, $328 in real dollars. To make it worse, Jigu bought 50 of these rings, so like $164. Seeing how so much money was spent, Yoon didn't want it all to go to waste, so he accepted the proposal. And just like that, they became online gay lovers. Just like I'd be in love with you liking the video and subscribing to the channel. That's right guys, we're going full swing with the gay stuff on this channel. And occasionally other things I can't cover on main. I'm building up the boy love videos here, so you better subscribe if you want more. Watching without a YouTube account? You better make one and subscribe to me anyway. Or else, boy love is over. So come on, hit that subscribe and I'll be your guy. Not a gay one though. The guild leader apologized to Yoon, promising to deal with Jigu later. Using the couple's chat, Jigu sees that Yoon was about to do his class upgrade quests. He offers to help, but Yoon refuses any help from him. Still, Jigu tells him to stop being a tattletale to their guild leader, and to stop bothering other guild members, since they're a couple now. That gives Yoon an idea to send a friend request to every single guild member, because he refuses to do things Jigu's way. Yoon starts chatting with the new members who accept his friend request. But when Jigu tries to be friends, he rejects the proposal, then tells Jigu to cancel their couple status if he's so mad about it. The next day, Yoon gets a message saying he passed his initial recruitment test, but nothing was set in stone until he got through the interview. So, he dressed up in a suit and headed to the office. Since he was an hour and a half early, he decided to find a cafe to go over sample interview questions. Sadly, it was either a cafe was too full, or there were too many people smoking, or it was just outright weird. After walking around for a bit, he sees someone taking pictures of a cute cat. Just as he taps the guy's shoulder, the cat shrieks and runs away. Yoon apologizes, and the guy accuses him of pushing him to the ground. Towering over Yoon, this dark-haired man had an intimidating presence. Oh nah, now that I've seen more BL this past year, I can tell Yoon is the bottom. Yoon explains that he's just trying to get to Cafe Earth, so the guy decides to guide him there. On their way, Yoon hears him complaining about a game, and that reminds him that Illusion had a new event coming out soon. At that moment, the announcement gets posted, and it's filled with bug fixes and talks about new events, including one for couples. Not having played this game enough, Yoon didn't know if these events were worth his time, but it seemed like the game was definitely more user-friendly than the games he had played before. He was excited for the spring events, but little did he know, the dark-haired mystery guy was looking at the same announcements as well. Yoon starts getting suspicious, seeing how the guy led him into an alleyway without saying a word. But luckily, the guy brought him right to Cafe Earth. Before he could say thanks, the guy was long gone. A couple days passed after completing the job interview, and Yoon moved on to the second round of interviews. After making friends with the members of the Poseidon Guild, he soon had a group of people who greeted him whenever he logged on, though he wasn't sure if he considered them his online friends yet. Of course, Jigu tried to get his attention, but he ignored him like always, despite saying he was going to help him. When it was time for Yo-woon's class upgrade quests, Jigu made excuses not to. Yo-woon ended up completing the quests by himself, and even hit level 150 within a couple of days. Still trying to get his attention, Jigu sent him a party invite. Yo-woon decided to hear him out this time. He's surprised to see other guild members in the party as they greet him. In a cute voice, Jigu goes, "Honey, you came." Disgusted, Yo-woon tells him to die. It turns out that Jigu gathered the other party members to help Yo-woon level, though he claimed he was doing this for himself. With the spring event, there was an event dungeon that dropped different items based on one's current level. Those between levels 220 and 229 can get a legendary reinforcement puzzle piece that helps with upgrading equipment. However, only couples can enter the dungeon. Seeing that he wasn't at the right level yet, Yo-woon told Jigu to cancel their couple status and find another partner. Even if he eventually reached the level requirement, he'd have to keep clearing the map with Jigu until they got the item. Yo-woon didn't want to do that. Jigu offered him many things, even money to entice him to, but it was futile. There was only one thing Yo-woon wanted. Once the event was over, he wanted to break up. At that moment, other members of the guild showed up and started laughing at Jigu getting rejected. They compared it to a scene in a contract relationship K-drama and continued to laugh it off. Jigu pointed to the fact he helped Yo-woon with leveling and his class upgrade. But with Yo-woon accusing him of actually being in love, Jigu called him ridiculous and told him they could break up if that's what he wanted. In the dungeon, everyone played their role well, except Jigu, who kept getting in the way. Despite being at max level, he was easily knocked back after taking one hit. Yo-woon told them to stay out of the way, and even the guild members agreed. They managed to defeat the boss, and everyone allowed Yo-woon to take the items, since they didn't need anything from here. Luckily, he ended up getting a rare item, known as the iridescent tulip crater. When the item is equipped on a mount slot, the user is able to fly when the mount is activated. Everyone was shocked, because the item cost around 700 to 800 million. So the guild members all tried to buy from him, but he ignored them. Jigu then sent a whisper, offering to buy it for 1 billion. He was laying down his pride by asking him, but Yo-woon pretended he couldn't read and asked him to type louder. Because of that, everyone else realized he sent a whisper. When they left the cave, Yo-woon initiated a trade with him. Before receiving the item, Jigu sent him 1.2 million, and using that chance, Yo-woon ended the trade without ever actually giving him the item. And just like that, bro became rich. After getting swindled, Jigu was furious. He challenged Yo-woon to a duel, but got rejected. However, Yo-woon initiated another trade and returned the money, and also gave him the item. Jigu asked him why, and Yo-woon said he was grateful. Despite not liking ant caves, Jigu played the map multiple times to help him level up. Because of that, Yo-woon wanted him to have the item as a token of appreciation, but Jigu complained about him giving the money back. So he rejected the trade and told him to keep the money. After that, Yo-woon left the party. Shortly after, he sent the item and money back to Jigu as a message. Jigu only found out as he logged off. The next day, after his interview, Yo-woon got a text from Se-hyung asking how it went. Yo-woon was depressed, thinking it was a total failure. Somehow, he felt like he didn't answer the questions as well as he should have. And after the interview, the candidate who sat next to him went up and called the HR manager Uncle. He assumed they'd make a nepotistic decision. Yo-woon thought it was unacceptable, and he couldn't wait to give his unfiltered review on their job post website. To calm himself, he went to the cafe to get a coffee. Surprisingly, he met the dark-haired guy from earlier, who turned out to be Yoon Jigu. Yo-woon tried to remind him of the day they first met, but Jigu kept glaring at him, making him wonder if he had a bad memory. When Yo-woon mentioned how he got startled, Jigu was flush with embarrassment. He tried to hold in his laughter while Jigu's colleagues laughed at him. After getting a taste of the cake he ordered, Yo-woon was thrilled at how delicious it was. He went to their website to check if the other cakes they made were good, but most of the reviews he saw were about Jigu's appearance. Their eyes met, and Jigu glared at him angrily, but Yo-woon gave him a gentle smile, admitting that he looked handsome. He then left a good review. The next morning, he was woken up by a phone call. After that, he woke up Se-hyung and gave him the good news about him getting accepted for his new job. Just last night, he was cursing them out for nepotism, but Yo-woon was glad he got in. Then, he remembered that he'd forgotten to log into the game, which meant he had missed rewards for the day. Yo-woon quickly logged in to find that his inbox was full. Checking it, he saw countless messages from Jigu, and all of them contained millions of in-game money. Thanks to that, he became an overnight millionaire. Yo-woon couldn't understand why someone would leave him with so much money. It wasn't just Jigu, his other guild members did the same. So he went ahead to start returning everyone's money one by one. However, his guild members felt it was rude of him to return their gifts. They called him a newbie, but he explained that he was a max level chef in the game he used to play. That game was Little Forest 2, and they knew all about it because players from there migrated to Illusion. Still, Yowoon wondered why they were all so willing to help him out. They told him that he'd need a lot of money for weapon upgrades, especially since weapons could be destroyed in the game if he failed an upgrade. Besides, they were also his friends. Curious, they asked how much Jigu sent him, and they were stunned to hear that he sent 50 billion. Dang, giga rich in game. Refusing to accept it, Yowoon sent the money back. Then, he created an alternate account and filled up the mailbox of his main account. That way, Jigu wouldn't be able to send him anything. When he logged on next, he got a whisper from a player known as Mountain God, who wished to buy some tokens of resurrection. The price for all of them is 200 million, but the Mountain God sent him 2 billion and refused to take it back. As Mountain God logged off, Yowoon realized there's only one person who could have been behind this. Yowoon suddenly showed up behind him, and before saying anything, Jigu accidentally turned himself in by saying, What? I swear it wasn't me. Later, Jigu complained about him not being online yesterday. They missed out on a lot of XP. It was still Yowoon's loss, but Jigu complained about waiting for him all day. He told Yowoon about Blue Hole, an instant messaging app that supports voice, text, and video calls, often used by online gamers to form parties. So, Discord. He proposed that they use it to plan when they'd meet online. But Yowoon didn't see any point in texting each other. To him, Jigu was just someone he met online. Captain Poseidon, their guild leader, and Cock Woish then show up, and they all hang out together. Jigu used the chance to apologize to Yowoon about his earlier behavior, but the guild leader already figured it was a fake apology and refused to give him back his rank. On their way to a different map, Yowoon asked Jigu what he did for a living. Given how much money he spent, they suspected he was a rich kid. Surprisingly, Jigu said he'd been working the same job for 14 years. His guild members teased him for being old, and Yowoon felt jealous, seeing how they all looked like a tight-knit group of friends. Jigu whispered to him, asking if he got the Blue Hole app. Since Yowoon asked him what he did for a living, Jigu felt he'd also be curious about what he ate. Despite not being interested, Yowoon downloaded the app and gave Jigu his user code. He immediately got a friend request from him, and as they all logged off, Jigu sent him a picture of his dinner. This was Yowoon's first time texting someone like this, who wasn't a friend. It felt kind of funny, but he started thinking of joining another guild. He wasn't even a member of the Poseidon Guild yet. Right then, he received an invite from the Strawberry Jam Guild, and the guild leader, Strawberry, showed up behind him. Yowoon didn't have a guild emblem, which was why Strawberry decided to invite him. So, he accepts the invite, and was welcomed by his new guild members. One of them randomly asked how old he was and his gender. Recalling what Captain Poseidon told him about those new users, he decides to keep his information a secret. Either way, they offer to help him with whatever he needed. But he already told them he had people for that. Strawberry points to Jigu and the others, asking if he meant them and if they were close. However, Yowoon didn't think they were close enough for him to consider that. Realizing he doesn't know anything about them, Strawberry reveals to Yowoon that the members of Poseidon are all cheaters. He even tells him to search them up on the Illusion Online forum. Yowoon searches them up and sees a lot of chatter about it, but it was all just speculation. Regardless, it was up to him to decide. So, Yowoon makes up his mind and asks them directly. When the Poseidon Guild members log back in, they were shocked to see that Yowoon joined another guild. Jigu had asked their guild leader to invite him, but now Captain Poseidon regrets not sending it before he left. Yowoon didn't think they'd be seeing each other after the couples event. He asked them if they use hacks, explaining that he heard it from the guildmaster of the guild he just joined. But it turns out, the Strawberry Jam Guild is just giving them a bad name. Furious, Jigu yelled out, challenging the Strawberry Guild to a fight. Due to Jigu's provocations, Strawberry answered him and suggested they have a clean 2v2 contest. Things escalated so fast right before Yowoon's eyes, and it seems the members of Poseidon were all fired up to get this match started. There was an entire guild of crackheads. Later, Jigu tells him that there's big news and sends him a link to details about the 2v2. Unexpectedly, Yowoon sees that he's been selected as one of the participants for his guild. They didn't even ask his opinion before putting him in the lineup, and now everyone in the game knows about this. Without much of a choice, Yowoon accepts his fate. Jigu then blames him for the fight and says that if he wins, he plans to request something from Strawberry Jam. Yowoon is forced to agree as well. However, he can't come on today because he has plans to go look at new apartments. Hearing that, Jigu feels bummed out. On the other hand, Yowoon finds it strange that Jigu is still trying to help him, despite the fact that they are in different guilds. But he concludes that Jigu has always been a strange guy. While Jigu is crashing out in the game, Yowoon wonders how he manages to stay online all week since he's still in college. Yowoon and San-young go together to check out a new apartment. It was the top floor apartment of a sleek-looking residential building, and still unoccupied. There was good lighting in the living room. It looked like there were at least 2 bedrooms with public transport nearby, and the building even had an elevator. With so many good features, Yowoon's heart raced. He had finally found the perfect place. After signing the contract, he takes a call. While Young is waiting, he happens to come across someone. Later in the elevator, Young tells Yowoon that he ran into the guy who lived next door and told him that Yowoon was moving in next weekend. Even though he tried to keep the conversation light, the guy complained, saying, "It just has to be next weekend, huh?" After that, he walked right past Young. Young warns Yowoon to be careful about his next-door neighbor. Given his experience, Yowoon's come across a lot of crazy neighbors, so it didn't really bother him. Logging into the game, his class gets upgraded to Shadow Warrior. Halloween Eggplant congratulates him and gives him an S-tier item for Shadow Warriors as a gift. The item looked just like the iridescent tulip he gave to Jigu. He also hears that Jigu is ranked on the leaderboard for PvP. When he checks, he was in disbelief, seeing Jigu ranked 18th on the leaderboard. Jigu then shows up and asks Yowoon to come to the makeup shop with him. Once Yowoon was done choosing his new skills, they all head over. When they get there, they watch as Jigu has the worst luck in trying to change his character's eyes. Following that, Yowoon gets a message from Motsuena to discuss their plans for the 2v2. That's when it clicks in his head. He schedules his move on the same day as the PvP event. Given that the fight is at night, he hopes he'll make it in time. He then tells the others he has to dip and meet with Motsuena. Jigu warns him, saying Motsuena doesn't have a good reputation. Apparently, he used to be in a guild called Liquid Candy, and there were bad rumors about him when he was there. On top of borrowing items and money and not returning them, he would harass the female members in the guild chat. He even made a scene by asking for their phone numbers and wanting to meet them offline. Yowoon recalled that he also felt harassed by him. Jigu then mentions that Motsuena wanted to join Poseidon, but he wouldn't let him in. Thinking back, Yowoon remembers that Poseidon had some pretty strict rules. He was also rejected at first, and the way Jigu thought of him then left him speechless. After clearing up the misunderstanding though, Jigu's attitude toward him completely changed. Now, they've gotten a little closer. Yowoon wondered if they would let him in on the whole story. He then reminds Jigu of when he wanted to join Poseidon, he got killed for no reason. He asked why Jigu did that, and the more he thought about it, the more pissed off he was. Looking smug, Jigu apologized, but Yowoon thought he was making fun of him. Jigu explained how new members were accusing them of using hacks, and even went ahead to create alt accounts to keep bugging them. Since they couldn't close the guild, they decided to stop recruiting new members. That's when Yowoon showed up to join. Seeing how he ignored the requirements, Jigu found him suspicious. Hence, he was very hostile when Yowoon first joined the guild. After hearing his explanation, Yowoon accepted his apology. Before he left, Jigu mocked him, saying he couldn't wait to get massaged during the battle. Up until now, Yowoon wasn't too competitive about the battle this weekend and was planning to keep it casual, but he changed his mind and decided he was gonna beat the hell out of this guy. Yowoon then met up with Motsuena and the other members of the guild. He quickly backs away because Motsuena started acting creepy, telling Yowoon he would have gotten through the 3rd upgrade quest quicker with him. The Strawberry Jam members were still convinced that Poseidon was using aim hacks. Motsuena would be streaming the fight, believing they wouldn't have the mind to use the hacks or else they'd get permabanned. While the guild believed Poseidon was cheating, Poseidon was firm on denying it. It was only a matter of time before the truth was revealed. As they teleported to the new map, Motsuena tells Yowoon to take it easy, since this is a practice match. The winning strategy for them was to stay alive. As the timer reached 1, the fight began. The time limit for a 2v2 PvP is 8 minutes, and the total number of kills determines the winner. So, the game doesn't end just by killing your opponent once. As the fight starts, Motsuena takes high ground. Using his skill, he immediately gets the first kill. The battle is so fast that Yowoon can barely tell what's happening. At that moment, card collector Cherry sneaks up behind him and lands a critical hit, killing him. As he respawns, Cherry kills him again. She basically uses him to farm free points because Yowoon is complete trash. He managed to get 1 kill, but died 12 times, leading to a devastating loss. A few moments later, he realizes he's screwed. 10 games and 10 losses. Motsuena offers to help him level up and says they can hop on voice chat. However, Yowoon is still wary of him. When the guy asks for his age, Yowoon says he's 40. Because of that, Motsuena starts calling him Nuna, thinking he's an old lady. Yowoon leaves the party getting too creeped out. He tries contacting Jigu, but he happens to be busy. So, Yoon decides to farm alone. Later, he realizes why Jigu was busy earlier. Jigu was busy grinding up to rank 3 in the PvP leaderboards. Yoon wonders if he's also been practicing for the battle, but he decides not to concern himself too much about it. Meanwhile, on the Illusion forum, people were placing their bets on whether or not Poseidon would use hacks or not, and no one seemed to be on their side. Even though Yoon didn't spend that much time with the people there, he felt like the guild had grown on him. For some reason, he was on Poseidon's side. He thought this world was ultimately about one's connections through school, neighborhood, and blood. Then again, none of these applied to him, so he forgot about all that and went to bed. The next day, Yoon moved into his new apartment with the help of Young and Sehyoung. While putting things in order, they heard a loud slam from his next door neighbor. Yoon decided to go introduce himself after they finished unpacking everything. By the time they were done, it was already evening. Yoon headed to get food, but decided to stop by an internet cafe first. With 3 rounds of 8-minute PvP, he'd only be playing for 30 minutes max. When he logged in, he heard that Meowie had upgraded his class to a Valkyrie all by himself. At that moment, he recalled they told him that Valkyrie was the worst class in Illusion. Usually, when one upgraded their class, they were supposed to get stronger. Not only do Valkyries deal only half the damage of Wolfists, but it's also insanely hard to farm the right items as a Valkyrie. It's the one class everyone says to avoid. Because of that, Yoon is worried about Jigu, but Jigu tells him to keep that worry for himself. For someone who has to play alongside a baby Valkyrie, he seemed really carefree. Hearing that they were in the arena, Yoon decides to join them, so he can see why people say Valkyrie is a trash class. Arriving at the arena, Yoon was shocked to see the whole place packed. He met up with Jigu, and they went to watch Meowie fighting a training dummy. Despite using a rocket launcher to fire explosive shots, Meowie misses every shot. At this point, Jigu is hopeless. Members of the Strawberry Guild start mocking them for missing, even though they were supposedly using aim hacks. Soon enough, Yoon hears the whole stadium chanting for the death of cheaters. He feels bad for the Poseidon Guild, but from the looks of it, they don't seem to care. As Motsuena starts the stream, Yoon hops on to watch, but it pisses him off when Motsuena refers to him as Nuna again, telling everyone he's a girl. Yoon decides to block him once the match is over. Before the fight is about to start, members of Poseidon wish him good luck. Despite being on the opposite side, they were rooting for him, and it made him happy. After that, the 4 participants were teleported to the City of Ruins for the first round. Before the round began, Motsuena got on his knees and professed his love to Yoon, asking to be his boyfriend. In that situation, Yoon cursed his life. Motsuena got rejected, but insisted on winning Yoon's heart by bringing him Jigu's head. As the fight began, Jigu and Meowie set their sights on Motsuena first. Refusing to stand by and watch, Yoon joined the fight and managed to kill Meowie while his guard was down. When he respawned, Meowie and Jigu combined their skills to hold down their opponents and finish them off, with Jigu summoning a huge spear, dealing a lot of damage. Yoon was shocked at how good their teamwork was, but even with that, Meowie still managed to die somehow. Strawberry Jam won round 2, leading with 2 kills. If they managed to win the round, then Jigu would have to delete his account as agreed. The crowd continued talking down on Poseidon, saying they lost because they turned off their hacks. And reading so much of their vile comments, Yoon thought they were taking it too far. He decided to screenshot a couple and report them later, but Jigu caught the crowd's attention as he whipped out his iridescent tulip cradle. He didn't look the least bothered about deleting his account if he lost this fight. For round 2, they head over to a hard map that no one likes. Not only did beginners tend to die of fall damage, but there were poison traps and holes in the ground. Yoon fell for all of them, even when the round just started. Barely 15 seconds into the round, Meowie died first because of fall damage. After that, Jigu swiftly took Motsuena out, then told Yoon to beg for mercy. Yoon attacked, but ended up getting slain, and Jigu teased him some more. Yoon wanted nothing more than to hit this guy at least once. As the fight continues, Meowie uses his binding ability to grab Motsuena, and continuously jumps off the cliff, doing suicide finishes, killing both himself and the opponent with fall damage. A crazy tactic, but it works well enough. Yoon would love to help his teammate, but there was a higher chance of him dying as well because of the confusing map. With 35 seconds left on the clock, he got captured. Surprisingly, Yoon begged for his life, so Jigu and Meowie left him and ended up killing Motsuena alone. But Yoon's team makes it to the final round. During the last round, while some viewers were impressed with Jigu's skills, others still thought he was cheating. But in the end, he got the last hit, making Poseidon the winners. After the game, Yoon left to get the food he ordered, but he got called back because he forgot his wallet. That's when he'd be surprised to run into Jigu, but the guy quickly walked away without saying a word. On his way home, Yowoon ran into him again on the street. When the walk sign turned green, Jigu told him to go first, and Yowoon started to think that maybe he's a really nice person. He got a text from Jigu in-game, complaining about him leaving without telling them. Yowoon then apologized, because of course he had something urgent to take care of. As they left, he ran into his neighbor again, leaving the grocery store. Lemons started falling out of Jigu's bag, so Yowoon helps him pick them up. But when Jigu turned around and noticed him, a cold sweat broke out all over him, and he started trembling. Jigu then ran away again without saying a word. Yowoon chased after him, all the way into their apartment building, but Jigu got into the elevator quickly, while still ignoring him. When the elevator stopped on the 9th floor, Yowoon remembered there were only 2 apartments on that floor, which meant one thing. After giving his friends their food, he headed over to return Jigu's lemons. Upon seeing him, Jigu stumbled backwards and fell, then threatened to report Yowoon for trespassing. He blamed Yowoon for showing his report card to his mom, and suspected him of stalking him. However, Yowoon wasn't doing any of that and had no idea what he was even talking about. He explained that he moved in next door and was just trying to return the lemons that dropped from Jigu's bag. As for the cafe, Yowoon happened to come by that day because of an interview. Still, Jigu didn't believe him. When Yowoon mentioned how he was running away and screaming earlier, he got flustered. He then told Yowoon to leave so he could log into his game. And feeling a bit curious, Yowoon asked which game he was playing. He didn't want them to have hard feelings towards each other. After all, they were neighbors. Yowoon's friends then called him because his food was getting cold. And after snatching the lemons, Jigu told him not to follow him around again and slammed the door shut. In his apartment, Yowoon told his friend that his neighbor was pretty good looking. Although Jigu was a little grumpy, he hoped they'd get closer in the future. It had been such a chaotic week for Yowoon. Regardless, he finished organizing his stuff in his new apartment and slowly adjusted to his new workplace. Jigu, who'd been too busy to contact him because of his PvP fights, was now back to his old self, and the guild symbol above Yowoon's head was gone. While working, he sneezed and realized he had a cold, thanks to leaving his windows open all night. His colleague came to his table, advising him to take his vitamins and start exercising. Yowoon mentioned he used to box, but admitted his body has gotten weaker since he hadn't been active much. Back at his apartment, he came across a flyer for a pool membership, but decided to consider it another day once he was fully rested. Logging into the game, he immediately got a party invite from Meowie. They met up, along with other Poseidon Guild members. Captain Poseidon asked him if he was okay with joining their guild. Apparently, Yowoon had no idea about the bet made with Strawberry Jam, stating if they lost, he would join Poseidon, but the guild leader didn't want to force him if he didn't want to. Concerning the level requirement, he told Yowoon it didn't matter. Apparently, Meowie joined when he was level 100. Yowoon recalled how he was roasted by Jigu when he was level 120 and tried joining, but back when Meowie joined, they didn't have a level requirement yet. He only created the rule last winter when people started targeting their guild. Yowoon then asked about Jigu and was surprised to hear that he's picking up swimming. He didn't think Jigu was the type to be active. Recalling the flyer he saw earlier, Yowoon considered taking the opportunity to learn how to swim as well. Prior to logging off, he let everyone know that he looked forward to joining the Poseidon Guild. The next day, while signing up for his beginner swim lessons, he saw his neighbor and was surprised to hear that he's part of the master class. Seeing his beautiful smile, Yowoon wondered why he looked so happy. As their eyes met, he waved at him, but Jigu gave him a disgusted scowl and stormed off. Since they always ran into each other, Yowoon hoped for a conversation, but Jigu always had his guard up. Getting to the apartment building, he appeared behind Jigu, scaring the life out of him. Jigu questioned why he kept following him, but Yowoon lived next door. What was he expecting? Still, Jigu didn't want to talk to him, and said he had no particular reason to like him. On the other hand, Yowoon wanted to be friends. As a good gesture, he slipped a macaron into Jigu's pocket and let him know that it's better for them to get along. Besides, they'd be running into each other every now and then. If Jigu had no reason to like him, then they could always make up a reason. But Jigu quickly went into his apartment and slammed the door shut, which made Yowoon think he's such a weird neighbor. The next day, Jigu complained to his friends about his neighbor, who he thought was a pervert. He claimed his neighbor said he loves him and also has 2 slaves who call him master. Yowoon thought that was crazy and was glad to not have a neighbor like that. Yowoon added that his neighbor's been stalking him and talking about how he'll make Jigu fall in love with him. Yowoon suspected this person plans on making Jigu his 3rd slave, but Jigu made up his mind to start giving his neighbor the silent treatment. During swim classes, Yowoon saw Jigu's well-chiseled body as he emerged from the water. He looked like he was on a magazine cover. For a moment, Yowoon noticed him looking in his direction. Though they've run into each other several times, this was the first time they were meeting at the pool. Yowoon then approached him, asking if he wanted to say something to him. Looking at Jigu now, he noticed the guy had pretty broad shoulders. He seemed like a good swimmer, which made Yoon wonder how long he's been swimming. Jigu ignores him and just glared angrily. Yoon asked for his age, and to his surprise, Jigu replied that he's 23. As for Yoon, he was 4 years older than him. With class over, he asked Jigu if he wouldn't be taking a shower, but Jigu assumed he was asking to shower together. So he swims off angrily, telling Yoon to stop joking around. 2 days later, they met at the pool again, but this time, Jigu was wearing a full bodysuit. As Yoon was about to get into the water, Jigu stopped him and started yelling that he'd hurt himself if he didn't warm up first. The water could shock his body, no matter how shallow it was. As they were talking, one of the kids swam up to them, saying, "It's Hyung with the big willy." That made the moment very awkward, and just as Yoon glanced down, Jigu covered his eyes, feeling embarrassed, asking what he was looking at. As they go back and forth about the matter, Jigu decided not to talk to him again. Shortly after, they met in the shower. However, Jigu was still ignoring. Yoon wanted to ask his name, but figured today wasn't the best day. Following that, he joined the Poseidon Guild in Illusion. In the guild room, while Jigu still complained about his neighbor to his guildmates, Captain Poseidon called their attention and introduced Yoon as the new member of their guild. It was just in time for the guild event. Being his first official guild event, Yoon felt nervous. Jigu told him to go pick up cabbages from the guild room so he can complete his guild quest. While picking up the cabbages, Yoon heard the May event was about to end. Thinking about it now, it was amazing he joined the same guild as Jigu after that terrible first impression. Once he got to spend some time with him, he could tell Jigu wasn't so bad. Nevertheless, he went ahead to end their marriage. And hearing he got dumped, Jigu fell into despair. Later, they started talking about Jigu's creepy neighbor. Apparently, he had to move last year because of a neighbor who was stalking him. Yoon realized things were more serious than he thought. To make things worse, Jigu was stuck with another pervy neighbor, and his friends were teasing him about it. Feeling concerned, Yoon asked him if he was really okay, and Jigu appreciated it. Then, he sent a request for Yoon to join voice chat. Once he joined, Yoon was caught off by Jigu's soothing, deep voice. It's hard to believe that this was the same person as the zesty little squirrel boy in the game, but it didn't take long before Jigu showed his real character, which made Yoon smirk. Jigu then told them about the time these toxic players started joining their guild. It was then his social media was leaked online, and he started receiving strange packages at his apartment. Considering even his guild members didn't know his social media or his address, it was strange how his info got leaked. Despite reporting it to the police, they couldn't do anything about it. Yoon asked him what kind of packages he received, but Jigu didn't want to talk about it. Jigu also had issues with his mom and older brother because of it, hence why he had to move. Talking about it made him feel better, so he asked Yoon if he could talk to him when he needs someone to talk to. After Yoon agreed, Jigu asked why he hung out with their guild, despite knowing about their bad reputation. Yoon told him that he didn't think they were the kind of people who would do those things the rumors said. Then out of nowhere, Jigu proposed to him again. He explained that it was just to get the movement speed buff from being a couple. Okay man, yeah, I see what you're doing. But if Jigu rejected him, he planned to use all the rings he had to propose today, just like last time. If Yoon agreed, hit him with an irrefusable offer, 2 billion in-game currency. Without delay, Yoon agreed to become a couple again. At the convenience store, Jigu rushed past him, and at this point, Yoon wondered why he was always in such a rush. When they got outside, Jigu opened up his umbrella because of the rain. Sadly, it broke and flew off with the wind. With that chance, Yoon asked him if he wanted to share his. It'd be a waste of money to buy another one. He then dragged Jigu with him, not giving the guy much of a choice. As they walked together, Jigu offered to hold the umbrella instead. Yoon then pulled out some sweets and slipped them into his pocket as a way of showing gratitude. Curious, Jigu asked why he was always giving him snacks, and if this is what he did to the other people he brought to his house on his moving day. Yoon nodded, saying it'd be great if they could become closer. After all, they were neighbors. When they got close to a cafe, Jigu rushed in, and Yoon saw him get into a commotion with a woman. When he came out, Jigu gave him a bag of lemon madeleines, and revealed that his mom was the owner. Yoon figured the woman had to be his mom. Jigu made it clear he's not giving him these treats because he liked him, and Yoon already assumed it was a thank you gift. But Jigu became flustered, and had a hard time actually saying thank you. Yoon thought he was adorable, and thanked him for the gift. Jigu was surprised that he knew his name, but that's because the name tag has been on his apron the entire time. Just as he tried to deny his name, his mom came screaming his name out loud, telling him to get back inside. Meanwhile, for for the guild event, they'd be having a siege war. It's an event where guilds fight to take over a city on the weekend. And on weekdays, there's a watchtower war, where players fought over watchtowers and a smaller hunting map. The Poseidon Guild chose the siege war, and the city they picked was the biggest on the map. The problem was that they'd be facing a lot of top-ranked players. Jigu then logged in and decided to help Yoon with his 4th class upgrade quests. They joined VC, and as Jigu called him Sweetheart, Yoon immediately left the call, but joined back after Jigu promised not to do it again. Hearing a wrapper sound, Jigu assumed he was eating and asked what it was. Yoon told him it was a lemon Madeline someone gave him. Very coincidental, as Jigu mentioned he also gave someone the same treat today. Thinking about it now, Yoon's voice sounded like someone he knew. Yoon also realized he knew someone as chaotic as Jigu, but threw that hypothesis straight into the trash, and they both took it as a strange coincidence. After completing his 4th class upgrade, Yoon crafts a sword and enchants it immediately. It leaves his guild members shocked, seeing how his enchantment was successful on the first try. He seemed pretty lucky when it came to crafting. Then, they started making fun of his looks, saying he still looked like a noob. At this point, Yoon was very bothered by it. Meowie asked for help in upgrading his bazooka, and in exchange, he'll give Yoon something nice. After the enchantment works, the item Meowie gives Yoon catches his interest, so he rushes off to the makeup shop. Jigu follows him and starts teasing him for changing his looks. Yoon then uses his coupons to change his hair and face, hoping to get something cool. He comes out with a new, badass look. While everyone thinks he's cool, Jigu isn't so excited. He wonders how Yoon got so lucky. Suddenly, he logs off and leaves VC. During swimming lessons, one of the kids asks Yoon about Jigu's whereabouts. Thinking of it now, he realizes Jigu hasn't shown up to swimming all week. Yoon fears he might have caught a cold that day after walking in the rain, and possibly fainting. Arriving on his apartment floor, he finds someone in front of Jigu's door. It turns out to be Jigu's older brother, Jiuk. Finding out that Jiuk is going to see his brother, Yoon decides to follow him. At the cafe, Jigu is shocked to see Yoon with his brother, and starts accusing him of sweet-talking him. But Jiuk reprimands him for being rude. Jigu then asks Yoon what he wants, and Yoon uses that opportunity to finally tell him his name. He thinks it's interesting seeing someone behave so awkwardly around him. Normally, he wouldn't care if someone acted like this, but for some reason, he can't help but want to get to know Jigu better. It's like Jigu always gets his attention somehow. Jihyuk decides they should have a seat, then asks Yoon if he's busy. Jigu tries to say that he is, but Yoon insists he's free right now. While Jigu makes coffee for them, Jihyuk asks Yoon how many times his brother has skipped swimming this week. Learning it's been 3 days, Jihyuk is visibly furious. He then notices Yoon must have done some other sports, thanks to his good posture. He hands Yoon his card, showing him that he's the CEO of a gym. As Jigu brings the coffee, his brother reprimands him for skipping swimming. He in turn lashes out at Yoon. However, Yoon is glad to see that he's not sick. Jigu gets all flustered, asking why he cares, but his brother smacks him and tells him to show some manners. After that, Jihyuk asks Jigu to look after his nephew, Yang, this weekend. With Jigu saying he's busy, his brother figures he's still playing that weird game. Jigu gets very anxious and agrees to look after the kid. He just wanted Jihyuk to stop talking. After Jihyuk leaves, Jigu tells Yoon to stop coming here, then returns to work. Days later, Yoon returns to the cafe, meeting a furious-looking Jigu at the counter. Yoon says he's just here for coffee, but Jigu mentions he's been here 3 times this week alone. To this, Yoon asks if he's been counting all the days he came by, making Jigu flush. Jigu immediately serves the drink and leaves. But still, Yoon hopes to see him smile one day. Logging into the game the next day, Yoon notices that Jigu isn't on. It's been a week since the last time he logged in, and he wasn't even active in the guild group chat. Suddenly, he notices Jigu walking past him, but this time, Jigu was using an alt account with the username G9Moon, and refuses to talk about anything concerning his other account. Either way, Yoon was happy to see him again, even though Jigu was acting like a complete stranger. Shortly after, Yang showed up at Yoon's door and mentions that his uncle lives here, and Yoon immediately realizes he's Jigu's nephew. So, he takes the kid to Jigu's front door and continues ringing the doorbell until Jigu furiously opens it. Seeing his nephew, he tries to take him inside, but Yang starts whining about how he wants to play with Yoon. As Jigu forcefully carries him inside, Yoon wonders if he'll be alright. The very next moment, Jigu comes to Yoon's door, asking if he's busy right now. The kid is more than he can handle. Jigu asks Yoon to come eat lunch at his place, at least until Yang falls asleep, and Yoon was happy to oblige. Entering the apartment, They find Yang sobbing on the floor, but he cheers up seeing Yo-woon. Yang asks him what he was doing in his room, and when Yo-woon mentions that he was playing games, Yang tells him that his uncle also plays games. Jigu flinches when his nephew reveals that, and he yells at him. After lunch, Jigu decides to make cookies for Yang. He drags Yo-woon to the kitchen with him, so that Yang will be left alone and eventually fall asleep. In the kitchen, Yo-woon sees some files from Daehan University, and figures that's the college Jigu attends. He asks Jigu about his major, and is surprised to hear he's studying business. He never would have guessed. Despite trying to make small talk, things become awkward. An announcement then comes from the front office, asking the owner of the silver car with plate number 6338 to move their vehicle from blocking the front entrance. Yo-woon recalls he hears this every week and has to run into his car at the entrance several times. But to his surprise, the owner of the car is Jigu's mom. Afterward, Yo-woon gets a text on his phone, and seeing him overly fixated, Jigu asks what happened. Yo-woon tells him he got a weird text from someone, but ignores the text and says it's no one important. Hearing that Yo-woon met this person from an online game, Jigu asks if they're close. Yo-woon says not really, especially since the guy ignored his texts for a week. But still, Jigu felt the person would be hurt if they heard him say that. On the other hand, Yo-woon wasn't bothered. It's not like the person was here to hear it, or so he thought. When Jigu was done with the cookies, Yo-woon decides to take his leave, but Jigu drags him back, telling him to take some cookies with him. He also tells Yo-woon to make sure he replies to the text he got earlier. Following that, Yo-woon sends a picture of the cookies to his friends, but they can't believe he hung out with his neighbor. Sejong wonders if he's playing dating sims IRL again, and at that moment, Yo-woon recalls a moment when a guy confessed to him in the past. Regardless, he wasn't so bothered about the idea that anything could happen between him and Jigu. Poseidon Guild's first siege war at Isis happens to be a hot mess. It's the event where you have to defend and attack at the same time. Thankfully, they ended up winning. However, Yo-woon had the most deaths. The guild leader tries cheering him up and advises him to watch videos to learn about the current meta. Jigu always records videos of his fights to avoid hacking accusations. Most likely, he'll always have a recording, but he left the game immediately after the event was over and didn't say a single word in-game. Yo-woon felt something was up. The next moment, Jigu logged into his alt account, so Yo-woon asked him for the recording of today's siege war. But Jigu questions why he has to share it in the first place. Yo-woon explains why he wants it and offers to give him something, even offering his cape, but Jigu wouldn't take it. As far as the others were concerned, Yo-woon offering that cape was basically a proposal. He tries to remind Jigu how close they were, and how they were basically best friends. This makes Jigu blush. Then he sends Yo-woon a personal message, asking if he's his closest friend in the game. Of course he is. The two of them talk way more one-on-one with each other than anyone else. Jigu gets fidgety, asking if he can call him Hyung. However, there's a guild rule that prevents personal friendships. Yo-woon thought he was adorable, and agrees, but he tells Jigu not to use it around other guild members. So, Jigu invites him to the voice call, where he finally refers to Yo-woon as Hyung. Heading out for dinner the next day, Yo-woon bumps into Jigu by the elevator. With Jigu asking where he's going, Yo-woon was shocked to see him initiate a conversation. Turns out, he's heading out to get some water. Since they were heading the same way, he asked Jigu if he wants to walk to the store together. He wasn't expecting Jigu to agree, but he did. After walking for some time, Yo-woon asks him if he's not going to run away. Jigu is flush, but ignores the question. Either way, it feels like they were closer than ever before. It's even more surprising to see Jigu bothering to look at him, and Yo-woon doesn't know how to feel about this. At the grocery store, they end up shopping together. Yo-woon thinks about returning the plate Jigu gave him with the cookies, but he didn't want to just return an empty plate. Just then, something catches his attention. Back on their apartment floor, he thanks Jigu for helping him carry the heavy items, and rushes inside and comes back with a robe as a gift. It was to thank him for the cookies as well, but Jigu thought he was crazy for telling him to wear a bathrobe at the swimming pool. Yo-woon didn't see any problem with it, pointing out that Jigu was always bringing his own towels from home. After accepting it, he made it clear to Yo-woon they couldn't go further than this. He was okay with being friends, but nothing more. Yo-woon stood there stunned, finding it hard to believe that Jigu actually wanted to be friends. And to celebrate their new friendship, he invited him over for a drink. Even though it was cheesy, this was a heartwarming moment for him. But Jigu said he didn't drink and then slammed his door shut. In the game, Yo-woon tells his friends about how he's drinking alone because his neighbor didn't accept his invite. They were shocked to hear that his neighbor was a guy, but Yo-woon didn't see anything wrong with that. As a matter of fact, his own character was based on his neighbor's fashion sense. And while he was giving off those compliments, Jigu was by the side, blushing hard. The guild members then start teasing Yo-woon about following Jigu. Jigu got flustered and logged off, but his face was still all red from being embarrassed. Later, Jigu sends Yo-woon the video from their last guild event. Even after watching, Yoon doesn't think there's much he can fix. His guild plans to hold a practice session, and he feels a little pressured. To make things worse, Jigu somehow adds to his problem by removing seals on class general equipment. To prevent cheating, one can place trade bans on valuable items, so they can't be stolen from your account. You can't transfer items that have seals on them to other people, and it takes about 24 to 48 hours for the items to become tradable. Even though the armor is so expensive, Jigu is willing to give all of his to Yoon for free. Yoon asked him why, and he said they'll lose if he dies so much. And just like that, Yoon's pressure was tripled. Following that, they start chatting, and Yoon mentions that he's at a cafe. Jigu asked if he was waiting for someone, so he started messaging every second like a little brat. Yoon told him to stop whining. He's only here for coffee and would get on the game soon. On his way back, he happens to see someone picking a letter from his apartment mailbox. He confronts the man, asking him if he's the person who used to live in 902, and explains that he put all the misdelivered mail into the return box. Seeing a letter with his name on it, Yoon snatches all the letters. Then, he sees one with Jigu's name as well. He gets curious and asks the man if he's looking for something and offers to take his number or his address if he needs his mail forwarded. But the man insists it's fine and walks out. After practicing the siege war, Yoon ends up with the most deaths again. His guild members notice he didn't have any defense equipment, and Jigu advised him to change his build. Receiving a message from Jigu, Yoon opened it up and got a set of S+ armor. Jigu allowed him to borrow it and planned to send him more once they became unbanned. Yoon was grateful to him. We move back to present day. At the office, Yoon was asked to go home because of his fever. On his way home, he bumped into Jigu, who suddenly ran off after a weird conversation. Back at his apartment building, Yoon found a man from before, rummaging through his mail again. The robber fell for Yoon's trap and started lying about his name. Seeing that he's been caught, the man immediately walks away, and sadly, Yoon's too sick to chase after him. Going through the letters, he notices one of them has been ripped open, and it happens to be the one containing Jigu's school grades, which look really bad. He definitely only cares about video games. Yoon fears Jigu will put his guard back up if he finds out about this. Later, he tells Jigu he can't get on because he's sick. The fever eventually takes over, and suddenly, Yoon hears his doorbell ringing continuously. He drags himself to the floor, where he sees Jigu and falls onto his shoulder. Wobbling his way back to his table, Yoon falls to the ground, breathing heavily. Then, he passes out. The next time he opens his eyes, he finds himself in Jigu's place. Due to his high fever, Jigu brought him here because he was scared Yoon would die. Yoon's pleased to see him talk this much. He thanks Jigu for the help and gives him a warm smile. Recalling Jigu helped him swallow his medicine, Yoon was relieved that he came to the rescue. He then mentions the report card, asking if that isn't why Jigu came to his house earlier. Jigu gets flustered and starts stuttering. Then, he says that's the only reason he'd come to Yoon's house in the first place. Yoon tells him about the thief who was searching through the mailboxes. Apparently, it's a strategy for burglars who plan break-ins. They check the mailbox first to find a home that's been unoccupied for some time. Either way, Yoon swore he didn't look at the report card and see Jigu's grades, but he couldn't keep up the lie. Jigu got embarrassed and yelled out that he usually got grades better than that. He took all the exams, but because of his attendance grade, he couldn't do much about it, although insisting that he used to get A's in his freshman year. Yoon then decides they should clear up how they address each other. He recalls Jigu referring to him as Hyung before he passed out, but he tells him that he can just call him by his name. Jigu gets flustered, but decides to stick with calling him Hyung. He also tells Yoon to address him casually as well. Yoon wants to head home, but Jigu tells him to sleep here first. He'll just play his game while waiting for him to fall asleep. It felt weird for Yoon to see someone take care of him like this. Plus, it's been a long time. Before falling asleep, he notices Jigu stealing glances at him. He's grateful for the care, and while he falls asleep, Jigu logs in to Illusion. On the day of the Siege War finals, Yoon finally logs in. In the arena, he sees the guild master of Melody, Sunset, who seems to be banned from chat, along with Jigu. Apparently, after last week's semi-final, the GM of the Surgery Guild started some drama on the forums involving Jigu's equipment. Jigu reignited the discussion, and for some reason, Sunset took his side, and they got chat banned. They load into the game, and Jigu gestures to Yoon, saying he'll protect him. He also texts Yoon in the chat, advising him on what to do. With the two of them side by side, the battle begins. When the fight starts, they see the Melody Guild members just running past them. However, Poseidon reaches their castle and attacks. That's when they find out that their opponents put all their points into their castle defense. Meanwhile, their teammates start dying off. Yoon and Jigu head back to help the others. Using a string of combos, Yoon defeats Sunset. But that's when the tables flip on him. Sunset then decides to target him. Taking revenge for Yowoon, Jigu kills Sunset, and the cycle keeps repeating until eventually Poseidon wins the fight. Later that night, Jigu tells Yowoon how he won every fight against Sunset, except for 3. Yowoon realizes Jigu hated the way Sunset was talking bad about his character earlier, and it makes him think Jigu is acting cute. During swimming lessons, he meets Jigu at the pool. Every time Yowoon sees him, he thinks about how Jigu swims like a really fast fish. His solid form makes Yowoon drawn to him. Compared to other people, Jigu is tall, good-looking, and has broad shoulders. Yowoon then blurts out he's handsome, and that gets Jigu flush. Jigu reminds him that they're just friends, but then he asks why Yowoon doesn't talk more casually with him. Realizing he forgot he said he'd speak to Jigu more casually as well, Yowoon asks him when he started swimming. Jigu replies, in middle school. This was the only sport he could play without seeing his older brothers. Apparently, both his brothers almost drowned in a creek before he was even born, but he liked that he could swim without them breathing down his neck. Yowoon wondered if he hated his brothers that much, but didn't feel they were close enough yet to be asking about his family. So, he asked Jigu why he doesn't wear the bathrobe he gifted him, and Jigu says he never plans to wear it. After that, Yowoon asks if he wants to walk home together later. Jigu starts blushing and agrees if he's willing to wait for him. On their way home, Yowoon tries talking to him, but Jigu asks if it's a bad thing he doesn't talk a lot. Yowoon tells him that he talks quite a bit for an introverted person. However, Jigu doesn't agree. For what it's worth, Yowoon thinks it's nice to have a talkative person around because you won't get bored. But it's also nice to have people who don't speak as much, since you'll feel more relaxed with them. So, even if he's not much of a talker, Yowoon still likes that Jigu's that way. Those words leave Jigu flush. They come across an injured cat, and Jigu immediately walks up to it and starts petting it. With the scars on its face, it's obvious the cat has been in a fight. As it limps away, Yowoon sees that Jigu's worried. This was the same cat Jigu was feeding when he first saw him. Once they get to the apartment, Jigu says he's going to eat dinner with his brothers. So, Yowoon heads to the elevator. Suddenly, Yang dashes in and hugs him from behind. Ji-yook rushes in to get his son and tells him that they have to go, but Yang won't leave unless Yowoon comes to dinner with them. Without much of a choice, Yowoon tags along, and he gets to meet Jigu's mom and other older brother. Now seeing how Jigu acts with his brothers, Yowoon doesn't think they hate each other. As a matter of fact, he tells Jigu that he's cute with the way he acts like a baby brother. Jigu gets flustered, and with him referring to Yowoon as Hyung, his brothers get shocked and they start teasing him about it. Shortly after, Yowoon realizes Jigu's been antsy ever since they got here. He places his hand on Jigu's, giving him a warm smile. Yowoon thinks Jigu's worried about him bringing up his report card, but his action only gets Jigu more flush. After dinner, while Jigu gets teased by his brothers again, Yowoon catches sight of the thief from earlier. Jigu's brothers immediately apprehend the thief, and Yowoon snatches a letter out of his hand. It turns out the person he's been targeting all along is Jigu. The guy blames Jigu for ruining his life with his girlfriends and also getting him fired from his part-time job. On top of that, he lost an entire year's worth of scholarship money. Hearing the accusations, Jigu reveals that this guy was cheating on his girlfriend, but he wasn't the one who spread the rumors. It was the man's ex. And that's when it clicks for him. The thief is also the one who terrorized Jigu's social media and tarnished his reputation by posting his report cards online. Because of that, Jigu was forced to go to the military. The brothers then take the thief away, threatening to take him to court. As they leave, Jigu tells Yowoon that he isn't really shocked, seeing that the stalker is already someone he knows. He already suspected it was someone from his school. In fact, this thief was on the student council, and that's why, at the beginning, Yowoon seemed suspicious to him. They crossed paths too often for it to be a coincidence, and Jigu couldn't help but be cautious. Still, Jigu believes he didn't do anything wrong. The thief was dating a girl from his major, but Jigu would often see him hanging out with another girl. All he did was just text the girl asking whether or not she knew the other one. It ended up becoming a big issue online. Patting him, Yowoon tells Jigu he did a good job. It seemed Jigu cared a lot about other people more than he assumed. Because of what Yowoon assumed of him, Jigu asks if Yowoon would be turned off if his personality was a lot different than what he originally thought. However, Yowoon said he wouldn't mind at all. They hadn't known each other for very long, so it was natural for him to be surprised whenever he saw a new side to Jigu. Even though who he really is might be different from how he acted towards Yowoon in the past, it didn't necessarily mean the way he was right now wasn't real. At the end of the day, he accepted both sides of him. As Yowoon headed back inside, Jigu said, "I'll see you later," but mutters to himself at the guild. Ooh, so Jigu knows, but Yowoon doesn't. On the day of elementary school graduation, Jigu shuddered, hearing his older brothers call him baby in front of his classmates. He got so embarrassed with his friends asking if they called him baby at home. He was so pissed. He wished he'd been born in a different family. Life was always tough having older brothers. Running errands was standard on Parents' Day, and he was often taken advantage of. But a difficult life didn't end with family issues. In middle school, a girl in class he didn't even recognize wagered a bet with him. Whoever scored higher in the exam after tomorrow would confess to the other. He wanted nothing to do with her so bad, and somehow scored a 0. This pissed the girl off so much, she asked if he hated the idea of confessing to her that much. This wasn't intentional on his part though. He was so nervous he couldn't sleep at all, and almost dozed off during the exam. But still, the drama was trivial, until he overheard his classmates spreading rumors of his family being involved in gang stuff because his brothers were huge and intimidating. The baseless rumors kept spreading further and further, and in the end, he couldn't hold back the frustration from his lies anymore. He shattered the classroom window during cleaning duties. That was the moment he couldn't escape the bad image they pinned on him with those rumors. They followed him all the way to the end of high school, but even then, he still wanted to find a real friend. One night, he decided to check out the game his classmates spoke of. He started playing absent-mindedly and encountered characters with completely opposite personalities to his own. The people in the game just did whatever they wanted. They didn't know who he was in real life. He found comfort in this. So, he immersed himself in the game world, and even made friends there who genuinely accepted who he was. As long as he played the game, he could reveal as much of himself as he wanted. Eventually, he passed the university entrance exam. He was always glued to the game, so his academic performance was terrible. But under relentless pressure from his parents to pass the university entrance exam at all costs, he reluctantly agreed to take extensive tutoring. Unlike the dreadful time he had during middle and high school, his university life was quite peaceful. He one day invited his classmates out to pizza, but the guy next to him said something that threw him off. That Jigu didn't seem friendly, but the moment he opened his mouth, it shattered that image of him. While walking around campus, he noticed Sojung's boyfriend holding hands with another girl. Sojung was a core member for their group projects, so he decided to snap a photo of the guy and send it to her, having no idea this would change everything for him. Eventually, Jigu's report card was posted online and in front of the school bulletin board for everyone to see due to the cheating guy he exposed. But it didn't stop there. It escalated to the point that they vandalized his home by spray painting F for his failing grades. Having run away to the military, he thought things would get better. But the harassment followed him into illusion, and he thought about leaving the guild. However, even though relationships in his life were ruined, he swore to protect his online friends. Soon after, he met Yowoon in-game and thought he was one of those people accusing him of cheating. But Yowoon turned out to be more strange than he expected, and on another day, they met in real life. To Jigu, Yowoon was suspicious, but that day, he just needed directions to Cafe Earth. Jigu was only more suspicious then, because out of all the cafes, it just had to be his family's. And then a few days later, he begrudgingly took Yowoon's order. Yowoon made small talk about him being the guy feeding the cat from last time. It angered him that Yowoon was acting like he knew him, but he hoped to never run into Yowoon again. Then, when his guildmates found out Nuta joined another guild, he was flabbergasted. Yowoon had been playing with them the whole time. He got so pissed, he started spamming for strawberry jam to fight him in world chat. He was angered by the fact they took the newbie he was raising, and eventually, he easily won and took him back. He stood up and happened to see Yowoon at the same internet cafe and thought he was being followed and dipped out. He really thought Yowoon might be a stalker, a stark contrast to the way he texted Nuta online. Nuta messaged him to say he logged off the game to go outside and head home, and Jigu messaged, "I'm also outside right now. Is this fate?" While smiling. The night he went to get lemons, he couldn't believe Yowoon was right behind him. He sprinted home, Googling things like how to report a stalker to the police, how many years in prison for a stalker, same-sex stalking, and how to request for CCTV footage from an internet cafe. He thought Yowoon had to be someone stalking him from school, but was blown away, finding Yowoon offering his lemons back that he dropped. He thought the pervert next door, ever since then, had been following him to the swimming pool and slipping snacks into his pocket. Yowoon smiled at him then and said, "We'll be running into each other often, so it would be nice if we got along. You're avoiding me too openly." It made Jigu feel bad. He tried speaking cold to Yowoon, but it never got through. He got scared, thinking he was perhaps getting involved with this strange pervert next door. He told his guildmates about it, and they didn't take him seriously and thought he was bragging. Except Nuta. He was the only one who ever listened. But then, his heart shattered with their divorce. He couldn't believe Nuta broke up with him so suddenly, but respected his ability to draw boundaries. Unlike his perverted neighbor, Nuta always expressed genuine concern and had a gentleness the others did not possess. He eventually proposed to Nuta again, who he knew appeared firm, but surprisingly was soft-hearted. If pestered enough, he'd do anything. One day, when he heard Nuta received some Madelines, he felt a sense of deja vu. From the start, Nuta's personality was completely different compared to the pervert next door. Then, he saw Nuta's character got a makeover and looked just like himself. He logged out of the game so fast, he felt closer to the idea that Nuta and Lee Yo-woon were one and the same. For a while, he avoided Yo-woon on purpose, yet somehow, he managed to talk his way into coming into the cafe. Thinking about it more, Yo-woon's soft-spoken tone reminded him of Nuta. He wondered if Yo-woon knew he was G9 Star, and if he had some sort of goal. He just couldn't understand him. He continued to ignore Nuta on his alt, since there was no solid proof he was the same guy as Yo-woon. Eventually, deciding to test him. With Yo-woon at the cafe, he sent him a message, and Yo-woon reacted to it, mumbling, "This jerk, what's his problem?" That was Jigu's concrete proof Yo-woon is Nuta, and he didn't know he was G9 Star. That evening, he let his head thud on the table. He couldn't believe the coincidence of all this. They weren't close, but also a couple. Thinking about it all really annoyed him. In the game, Nuta was too good at setting boundaries, but in real life, he didn't know any boundaries at all. When Nuta told him his character was based on the style of the guy next door because he was so good looking, that really made Jigu embarrassed. It was stranger for Jigu that someone could like him this much. On the day Nuta told him he couldn't log in to the game because he was sick, Jigu got so anxious, he rushed over to his place. When Yo-woon fell asleep after being cared for, Jigu just stared at him. He thought of Yo-woon's features as delicate and well-defined. The day of the guild wars, where the enemy guild insulted Nuta's looks, Jigu got angry on his behalf. And that's where Yo-woon called G9 Star cute. Jigu really lost it. He wasn't trying to act cute, but those words stuck with him night and day. He jumped into the pool, trying to stop himself from getting shaken by this. Making excuses, Yo-woon only acted this way because he was a weird guy. Then, the night they caught the stalker, Yo-woon told him he accepted all sides of his personality. That really made Jigu's face hot. He slept that night, thinking he should be nicer to Yo-woon from now on, and opened his eyes to find his hands shackled, and Yo-woon asking if he was awake. Jigu told him to take his hands off, but Yo-woon just licked his lips. He touched the spot on Jigu only a lover would touch, and told Jigu he wasn't being honest with himself. Then, stood above him, holding something to punish Jigu with. He told Jigu he'd get used to it, just like his slaves. Jigu woke up flustered and shocked. He couldn't believe the dream he just had. Leaving late from work, Yo-woon regrets his 9-to-5 life, wondering why people even work for a living. He hopes the world ends tomorrow. But when he passes Cafe Earth and sees Jigu working, he realizes it's a hard-knock life for everyone. Jigu approaches him, asking why he didn't come to swim today. Not only that, but Yo-woon didn't come yesterday, and he doesn't come to the cafe these days. But it's due to him working overtime. Jigu looks pretty worried about him, but Yo-woon doesn't get why he cares so much. Seeing a bandage on his hand, Yo-woon asks him what happened. Earlier, Jigu got scratched when he tried to catch a stray cat. Seeing how concerned Yo-woon looks, Jigu felt his heart racing. After that, he goes in to get a box of cookies and hands them to Yo-woon, who notices they're heart-shaped, but Jigu tells him it's not what he thinks. As they get to their floor, Yo-woon thanks him and wishes him a good night. He plops himself on the bed, and Jigu texts him, asking him to get on the game because he's bored. He starts spamming Yo-woon's phone, but it stops shortly. Yo-woon found it strange. He wondered what's changed. He falls asleep, missing Jigu's goodnight message. By the end of summer, Yo-woon gets promoted to team leader in his office. Well, more like he's forced into the promotion, and there's no difference in his tasks. During his swim lessons, he tells Jigu that the top performers in his class will move up to the intermediate class next week. And from the looks of it, Jigu can tell he has no hope. Instead of practicing, Yo-woon's over here bothering him. Jigu teases him, saying he just comes to the pool to hang out. After swimming, Yo-woon gets a call from his colleague, Jae-yuk. With him answering, Jae-yoon yells out, "Boss, I'm so sorry!" But it turns out to be nothing too serious. Once Yo-woon is done with the call, he sees Jigu standing very far away from him. Jigu wonders if he heard correctly that someone just called Yo-woon boss. Yo-woon gets somewhat embarrassed, explaining the promotion he got at the office. But still, Jigu asks about Yo-woon's friends who were at the apartment the other day, and if he sold them off. Yo-woon doesn't get what he's talking about, but he mentions that he invited his friend over, and asks Jigu if he wants to hang out with them. Jigu gets flustered and yells he doesn't want to. As they walk home together, Yo-woon notices the atmosphere is weird, and Jigu hasn't been saying much. When they get to their floor, Jigu asks him if he's doing this on purpose, and acting out against him. Yo-woon's so confused. But in that time, Young bursts out of his door, yelling at him to come in. He then sees Jigu, and everything gets awkward. Jigu stops him, telling Yo-woon doing that kind of call on purpose in front of him was really obvious, and this kind of thing doesn't work on him. He tells Yo-woon he's going too far, and slams the door as he enters his room. Yo-woon's left completely confused. In his room, he wonders why Jigu got so angry. That was the first time he'd seen that expression on him. Young then calls his attention back, suggesting they go to the convenience store to get more drinks. Outside, they find Jigu on the swing in the playground, but he is not pleased to see them. Young then asks Yo-woon what's going on between him and Jigu. However, Yo-woon still has no idea. Young reminds him of Chae-min. Back then, Yo-woon used to rely on Chae-min a lot when he was a freshman. Chae-min was a senior who generously shared everything, from books to department info. They were always together. However, when Yo-woon started dating his first girlfriend, Chae-min suddenly left for the military without saying a word and disappeared, cutting off all contact. Young made Yo-woon feel like it was his fault, and also reminds him of how he always confuses people and how many times he got confessed to. There was also someone in high school who confessed to Yo-woon. Young then tells Yo-woon it might not be so different with his neighbor, but Yo-woon finds it hard to believe that Jigu actually likes him. They haven't been close for long, and before that, Jigu used to get mad just seeing him. Regardless, Young teases him, saying he'll come around a few months later, talking about how the guy next door likes him. With Yo-woon starting to hit him, Jigu drops in and stops him. Yo-woon tries to explain that they're just joking, but they don't seem to agree on this. He then gets angry about Jigu taking Young's side instead of his. Following that, he asks Jigu why he's angry, because from his perspective, he didn't think he did anything wrong. The situation becomes heated as the two of them stare each other down. While looking at the two of them, Young was sure something was about to go down. To take out his frustration, Yo-woon logs into Illusion and enhances his equipment non-stop, but it doesn't help. He's angry at Jigu for acting childish and decides he won't ever talk to him again until he apologizes first. Jigu logs in and starts bugging him, asking why he's running around in his undies. However, Yo-woon doesn't want to talk about why he's angry. While everyone else goes fishing, the two of them remain behind. Jigu tells him that he's always here to talk if he needs it. So, Yo-woon explains he got into an argument with his neighbor, and he also has a lot on his mind. Jigu asks why the argument came up, but Yo-woon's clueless. He thinks his neighbor has anger management issues, and when he asked, the guy wouldn't tell him, so he didn't know what to do. At this point, Yo-woon was done with him. Hearing this, Jigu freezes in fear, then suddenly logs off. Yo-woon felt a lot better now. In contrast, Jigu lied on the floor devastated. He didn't really know how to explain it to Yo-woon, and it's not like he meant to get mad. Recalling the phone call Yo-woon had that day, Jigu assumed he did it so brazenly to make him jealous, and Yo-woon even went ahead to show him his slave. Through all that, Yo-woon looked at him with pure, innocent eyes. Jigu didn't understand how someone like that could enjoy such a dirty lifestyle. He wonders if Yo-woon always led people on like this. It's not like he was willing to say yes, even if he got asked out nicely. But to him, this approach was all wrong. The fact that Yo-woon was resorting to stupid tricks like this made him so mad. But if he told Yo-woon the reason, it would look like he's giving him a chance. So he figures it's best for Yo-woon to give up on him. During swim lessons, they catch sight of each other, but Yo-woon just ignores him. After swimming, Jigu feels bad seeing Yo-woon leave without waiting for him. He follows him outside, wondering what exactly he did wrong. Unable to hold it in any longer, Jigu grabs his arm, and Yo-woon asks if he has something to say. He thinks Yo-woon's the one who made the mistake first, but thinks if he says that, they'll end up as strangers. He didn't want that. So, he asks why Yo-woon didn't come to swimming or to the cafe. He was waiting for him. He didn't want Yo-woon talking about other people or even answering strange calls in front of him either. He mentions when Yo-woon talked about introducing his friends so they could all hang out. He wasn't into that type of thing. Yo-woon then asks Jigu if he likes him, but Jigu denies it. He doesn't want it to feel like he's giving him a chance. However, Yo-woon seems okay with it. He invites Jigu to have dinner with him. and as he grabs his hand, Jigu gets flush, with his heart racing fast. Maybe a bit too fast. Afterwards, Yoon hears from some old Little Forest players that there's a return event where, if one plays for 2 hours, they can get 10 eternal herbs. It was such a super rare item back then, you couldn't get it even if you had a lot of money. Yoon's so desperate to have it that he thinks about installing the game again. Following that, Yoon logs into the game and joins him in voice chat. Together with their guild members, they go ahead to complete some daily quests, but all Yoon can think about is downloading Little Forest again. With everyone taking a break, he uses the chance to log into Little Forest. While muttering to himself, Jigu overhears him and asks what he's talking about. Yoon tries to ignore him, but Jigu chases after and confronts him, and with no other choice, Yoon explains that he was talking about playing Little Forest again. However, Jigu doesn't like the fact that he's talking about another game, and suspects Yoon wants to quit Illusion. Why did he need items from a game he supposedly quit? Yoon replies that he'd do the same if he quit Illusion for over a year, and they suddenly had a return event. Jigu then asks if they can play together if he installs it, but Yoon usually played solo, so he wonders what it'll be like to play Little Forest with someone else. He agrees to play with Jigu, since he'll be a newbie in the game, and by the looks on his face, Yoon is planning something sinister. Soon after, Jigu creates a new character and logs into Little Forest, where he's swarmed by veteran players. Now, the tables have turned. After Jigu's teased a lot by the other players, Yoon comes along to save him on a horse. They go into town, and Jigu notices a lot of people recognize Yoon. It's obvious that he's well known in the game, seeing that Yoon has a lot of strong connections with people here. Jigu feels the need to stop people from finding out who he is in Illusion. Then again, he wonders why that thought occurred to him. While Yoon catches up with an old friend, they talk casually, and Jigu starts feeling jealous. It took him quite a while to start calling Yoon Hyung. He then tells Yoon that they can talk informally as well. He thought it was absurd that Yoon uses formal speech with him. Yoon reminds him that their guild requires mutual formal speech, and no personal friendships. He suspects Jigu is jealous, which immediately makes Jigu embarrassed as he tries to deny it. Either way, Yoon agrees to speak with him casually, and for Jigu, that's a win. Jigu ends up opening his big mouth and exposes both himself and Yoon for playing Little Forest. Because of that, Poseidon makes a new rule forbidding anyone from playing another game in secret. Yoon then confronts Jigu, believing he followed him into Little Forest to spy on him. Jigu explains that he was just curious about how the game was played, but Yoon didn't buy it. However, he was surprised when Jigu also said he wanted to get closer to him. Seeing that cute side of Jigu made him happy. On his way back from work at night, Yoon comes across an ad for a new dating sim called Love Evolution. Getting home, he installs the game to get a feel of what Jigu likes. He tries to romance the blonde-headed Yujin, but only gets the character telling him, "I don't want to see your face anymore, so go away." He gets his first bad ending, and after 3 days, he hasn't even achieved a single true ending. But refusing to give up, he tries again with a more serious mindset. But the streak of bad endings continues. While he's grumbling to himself, Jigu approaches from behind, startling him. He shows the new game he's trying out and offers Jigu to try it on his phone. Unlike Yoon, Jigu gets a perfect score on the minigame without even practicing once. Seeing how well he plays the game, Yoon gets closer to see the decisions he's making. Being too close makes Jigu flush, so he asks him to back up. On their way back, Yoon mentions that one of the characters looks like him. Jigu feels like he's thinking about him a little too much, even when playing games. As for why Yoon installed the game, he wanted to have more things to talk about with Jigu. They didn't share a lot of common interests, except for swimming. The way Yoon thought about him so much made Jigu flustered. Surprisingly, he said he wasn't into this kind of game, but no matter how much he said that, Yoon hardly believed him. To think he actually installed the game because of Jigu, who found it pretty weird, and seeing how much it bothered him, Yoon apologized for the misunderstanding. At the cafe, going through their chat, Jigu was furious, realizing he's always the one initiating conversations. Plus, Yoon's replies were half-hearted. Jigu questions if he's that worthless to him. It really annoys him. Jigu doesn't understand why Yoon makes him so anxious. The way he mumbles so loudly to himself, or his slightly parted pink lips when he's focused. The Yoon who smiles as bright as sunshine when they make eye contact. Jigu hates him. He finds himself always thinking about Yoon, and wishes he'd just confess to him already, just so he could reject him nicely and get it over with. So, Jigu's left wondering how a guy can like another guy this much. At the office, while Yoon chats with him, Jigu's surprised that he's actually quick to answer during work hours. Usually, Yoon ignores him and replies later at night. He always leaves Jigu hanging and only replies when he's bored. Yoon suggests he find something to cure his boredom since he's always bored. Realizing Jigu's hurt by his late replies, he decides to pay more attention to him from now on, but doesn't realize he ignored Jigu again. Jigu's eyes open to Yowoon in front of him. He's trying to tell him to stop unbuttoning his shirt, but Yowoon gets closer and pulls Jigu's hand under so he can get a closer feel. Jigu gets so red, and Yowoon whispers in his ear, "I thought you wanted this." Jigu shoves him away and somehow ends up on top, mouths nearly touching face to face. Jigu wakes up from quite the naughty dream. Yowoon keeps appearing in his dreams, and he doesn't know why. And now he has to goon to relieve himself of all the thoughts of the dream he just had. He asks himself, what in the world has Yowoon done to him? Meanwhile, in Illusion, Yowoon is trying to get the rare pet bunny from the current event, but his luck is terrible. Jigu shows up and says Yowoon should have pulled in front of him, since he's apparently a good luck charm. But after getting tricked last time, Yowoon refuses to fall for it again, and pretends not to know him before walking away. Trying to make up for things, Jigu offers to give Yowoon the muscle bunny if he manages to pull it. Yowoon starts thinking Jigu might actually be a decent guy, and pretends not to want the bunny so Jigu will insist harder. Surprisingly, Jigu asks if he can give him the exchange ticket in person, but Yowoon says he isn't ready to meet up yet. He'd rather keep his online hobby and personal life separate, though he promises to think about it. Jigu instantly sulks. During the event Raid Boss, everyone suddenly gets caught and attacked because of a game bug. Once the ice shatters, Sunset appears, and everyone immediately accuses him of hacking after he one-shots 30% of the boss's HP. While the entire server erupts in chaos, Meowie notices Sunset preparing to do something with the supply crate. At the same time, Yowoon finally manages to get the Buffy, bulky Snow Bunny exchange ticket. After all this time, his precious pet is finally his. But just as he's about to use the ticket, every player suddenly dies. No one can respawn, and somehow Sunset is the only player left alive. The entire server descends into chaos as players helplessly watch Sunset rack up points across different channels and climb to the #1 spot on the leaderboard. Later, the developers resolve the issue by rolling back the server, but that means Yowoon loses his precious bunny. He gets furious, logs off, and swears revenge on Sunset. Wanting to clear his head, Yowoon heads outside, only to run into Jigu standing in front of his door, asking to borrow a screwdriver. Hearing that Yowoon is going out, Jigu immediately decides to tag along. While walking outside, Jigu comments on how cold it is, and says he can't even see his breath. Yowoon doesn't feel cold at all, and tells him to go home if he's freezing. But Jigu quickly denies being cold and gets all flustered. The two of them decide to head to the grocery store, so Jigu can pick up the screwdriver he needs. When Yowoon asks why he needs it, Jigu nervously explains that he's building a cat tree for the cat he adopted, which oddly relieves Yowoon. At a food stand, Yowoon notices Jigu acting strangely careful around him. He's more talkative than usual, constantly glancing over every few seconds, and his reactions feel overly dramatic. Still, Yowoon finds the way he acts surprisingly cute, almost like a kid. Jigu catches him staring, but when Yowoon brushes it off, Jigu blushes hard. On the way back, Yowoon starts thinking that a 4-year age gap really isn't that big. Lately, everything Jigu does seems adorable to him. Jigu suddenly asks if something happened today, but Yowoon brushes it off. Then, Jigu complains that he looks ugly, earning himself a smack from Yowoon. Somehow, that tiny interaction is enough to cheer him up. At the elevator, Jigu invites Yowoon over to watch a movie. Since he has nothing else planned, Yowoon agrees, as long as he can drink while they watch. Once inside the apartment, Jigu's cat completely ignores him, and Yowoon points it out. Apparently, the cat only approaches Jigu when it's hungry or bored. When Yowoon asks for the cat's name, he's shocked to hear Jigu proudly call it Yoon Fluffkins. Suddenly, a screwdriver falls near Jigu, and he immediately kicks it away before Yowoon notices. Trying to change the subject, he asks if Yowoon wants snacks and brings out the movie they'll be watching, only to discover Yowoon has already seen it. Unlike Yowoon's friends, who can sit through horror movies without blinking, Jigu squirms nervously through the entire film. Yowoon finds his reactions endlessly entertaining. Even though Jigu insists he isn't scared, his trembling hands say otherwise. Yowoon leans closer and teases him about it, making Jigu's heart pound wildly. Jigu tells him to stop creeping closer when Yowoon casually touches his hand. Jigu becomes even more flustered while still desperately trying to keep up his tough guy act. Eventually, Yowoon falls asleep. Watching him, Jigu realizes this is already the 3rd time Yowoon has come over, but somehow today feels completely different. The first time was because of Yang, and the second was because Yowoon was sick. Back then, Jigu hated him with every fiber of his being. Now he has no idea how things ended up like this. He starts wondering when exactly he began feeling abandoned, whenever Yowoon skipped the pool, or hurt whenever he couldn't reach him. He hates when Yowoon is out of sight, and hates seeing others give him a hard time. Most of all, he hates the thought of Yowoon quitting the game. Leaning closer, Jigu finally admits the truth to himself. He likes Yowoon. At first, he never cared about dating and definitely never imagined liking another guy. But somehow, Yowoon changed all that. To confirm his feelings, Jigu quietly kisses him. His chest pounds so hard, it feels deafening. This is his very first kiss. People always talk about hearing heavenly bells during a first kiss, but all Jigu hears is the thunderous pounding of his own heart. After splashing water on his face, he returns to the living room, only to find Yowoon gone. In a way, Jigu feels relieved, but he has no idea how he's supposed to face Yowoon now. Still, he convinces himself they're on the same page, and wonders when Yowoon will finally confess. At the pool, Yowoon is stunned to see Jigu wearing a new swimsuit. Normally, Jigu wears a full bodysuit, but this time, he's only wearing trunks. Yowoon can't stop staring and awkwardly points out the change, wondering if Jigu is showing him way too much skin. Jigu asks if something happened over the weekend. Yowoon suddenly left his apartment, but Jigu casually says he probably stumbled home half asleep. Soon, Yowoon's instructor arrives for swimming lessons, though he can feel Jigu staring at him the entire time. Later, Yowoon receives compensation news from Illusion. Thanks to Sunset's stunt, Sunset received a 6-month ban, and the developers announced that lost items will be restored through player mailboxes. Hearing this, Yowoon lights up with joy because it means his bunny is back. Right then, Jigu suddenly appears behind him and startles him. He asks if Yowoon has something to tell him, but Yowoon just shakes his head in confusion. Back at home, Yowoon starts replaying what happened at Jigu's apartment and quietly wonders if Jigu really kissed him. Later at the cafe, Jigu gives Yowoon some leftover cookies. Noticing how strangely Jigu is acting, Yowoon asks if there's something he wants to say, but Jigu immediately throws the question back at him. Since Jigu keeps staring his way, Yowoon expects him to finally confess something. Instead, Jigu gets flustered and storms off. Watching him leave, Yowoon realizes Jigu has been wearing his heart on his sleeve this entire time. Oddly enough, he isn't completely bothered by the fact that Jigu likes him. After all, Jigu is a good-looking guy. Still, he wonders if it would be better to simply tell Jigu he isn't interested. Thinking back, Yowoon realizes this is the first time something like this has happened since high school. Back then, he never rejected guys because they were men. He just never saw them as more than friends. But because of that, he ended up losing a lot of friends. At least in school, it was easier to let distance naturally drift people apart. This time is different. Jigu works at the cafe below his building and lives right next door. Avoiding him won't be easy. More than anything, Yowoon doesn't want to hurt him. Before rejecting him properly, Yowoon decides he first needs Jigu to actually confess. To make that happen, he plans to spend as much alone time with him as possible. What kind of plan is this? Later that night, Yowoon finally logs into Illusion and receives his bunny. His guild members warmly welcome him back, and while thinking of a name, he asks Jigu for suggestions. Jigu jokingly suggests naming it after his own character, which everyone immediately finds gross. Then without thinking, Jigu blurts out, "Come on, it's not bad, Hyung." The entire guild falls silent in shock. Even Yowoon gets chills. Jigu quickly stumbles through an excuse about mistaking Yowoon for his older brother, and somehow everyone moves on. Yowoon warns Jigu to be more careful. To him, using a pet name for the bunny would have been much safer, since they could pretend it was all a joke. Hearing that, Jigu immediately turns bright red. Then stepping closer, he calls Yowoon babe, completely horrifying him. Yowoon tries to escape, but Jigu keeps chasing after him and throwing out pet names non-stop. Apparently, he took Yowoon's advice way too literally. Even while saying them, Jigu looks seconds away from dying from embarrassment. For Jigu though, this is all just practice for when they eventually become a couple. As he continues blurting out pet names, he feels like crawling under a rock. At the same time, he wonders why Yowoon still hasn't confessed. In his imagination, confessing to him would look heartbreakingly beautiful. He wanted to see his Hyung cry in front of him. Jigu then asks what nickname Yowoon prefers, but Yowoon points out there's no reason for any of this, since they aren't even dating. Meanwhile, Jigu's heart races just imagining Yowoon calling his name. The feelings are becoming overwhelming. More than anything, He just wants to see Yo-woon all the time. 2 months pass, and somehow, the two of them end up constantly stealing glances at each other while silently waiting for the other person to confess first. Another Friday rolls around, and Jigu once again lures Yo-woon back to his apartment under the excuse of watching a horror movie. It's already been 2 months since Jigu started openly pursuing him. As usual, Yo-woon teases Jigu for being scared of horror films and trying to act cool. Jigu claims he just doesn't want to watch alone. Yo-woon secretly thinks the whole tough guy act is pretty charming, though he still keeps wondering if Jigu will finally confess today. While the movie plays, Yo-woon catches Jigu staring at him again. Every time their eyes meet, Jigu immediately looks away. He always acts like he has something important to say, yet never actually says it. Since they don't spend every day together, Yo-woon can't understand why Jigu wastes all their precious time alone, staying silent. As time passes, spending weekends together starts feeling completely natural. They practically act like a couple already. Even so, Yo-woon keeps reminding himself that all this is supposed to end with him rejecting Jigu someday. The problem is that Jigu never confesses. Eventually, Yo-woon realizes something dangerous. He's genuinely enjoying this. Walking home together, he finds himself unable to stop staring at Jigu's ridiculously handsome face. Part of him still waits for Jigu to confess, while another part selfishly hopes he delays it a little longer so they can stay like this forever. In moments like these, Yo-woon wishes time itself would stop before everything falls apart. A few days later, in Illusion, Jigu proudly shows off his new costume to Yo-woon. Apparently, he bought 2 matching outfits in hopes they could wear them together. Unfortunately for him, Yo-woon immediately changes into his own vampire costume instead. Even so, Jigu's heart races because he still considers it a matching couple outfit. The two decide to take pictures together, and Jigu can barely contain himself, thinking about how perfect they look side by side. Then Meowie suddenly appears, and Jigu desperately wishes he would disappear so he can have Yo-woon all to himself. Later, Jigu casually asks Yo-woon about his Christmas plans. Since Yo-woon says he'll probably stay home playing Illusion and watching movies, Jigu instantly decides to do the same. In his mind, this is the perfect chance to create a romantic atmosphere and finally get Yo-woon to confess. On another day, Jigu frantically cleans his apartment while waiting for Yo-woon to arrive. He prepares snacks, sets out flowers, and even arranges ambient lighting to create the perfect mood. Fresh out of the shower, he sits on the couch, eagerly waiting. The news announces that it's going to snow nationwide, making it the perfect white Christmas. To Jigu, it feels like the ideal day for a confession. A little while later, Jigu hears Yo-woon leave his apartment and rushes to check the hallway, only to find no sign of him. Panicking, he runs to the window and sees Yo-woon outside, dressed up nicely. Then a car pulls up. Yo-woon gets in, and the car drives away. Jigu's heart instantly sinks. His expression fills with despair as he wonders whose car Yo-woon entered and where he's going. After all, Yo-woon specifically said he'd spend Christmas alone. Meanwhile, Yo-woon is actually visiting the hospital with his friends after Se-hyung's surgery. During the visit, his friends bring up the neighbor who clearly likes him and ask what he plans to do if that neighbor confesses. Yo-woon quietly thinks that he'll gently reject him, just like he's always done before. Back then, he was always kind to everyone, which often made guys misunderstand him. The moment he realized he didn't like men was when one guy suddenly kissed him on the cheek. Ever since then, he believed rejecting Jigu would be the right thing to do. But when he remembers Jigu kissing him, he realizes he didn't hate it. Heading home later that night, Yo-woon is shocked when the elevator doors open and reveal Jigu standing there waiting for him. Jigu immediately asks where he was. Yo-woon explains that he visited a friend, but the answer does nothing to calm Jigu's emotions. Tears begin forming in his eyes as he asks whether Yo-woon knows how he feels. Of course he knows. Jigu asks the question directly. Does Yo-woon like him too? Yo-woon says it's complicated, but those words only make Jigu snap. Through tears, he accuses Yo-woon of only wanting him for his body. Completely humiliated, Jigu asks why Yo-woon keeps treating him so kindly if he doesn't feel the same way. That's when Yo-woon finally admits he remembers the kiss. And more importantly, he liked it enough that he didn't mind. Desperate for an answer he can actually understand, Jigu begs him to explain things properly. So, Yo-woon kisses him, and in that moment, he realizes Jigu means far more to him than he ever admitted. Originally, Yo-woon planned to reject Jigu gently and suggest they remain friends. But the moment he saw Jigu crying in front of him, he realized he couldn't say those words. More than that, he didn't want to. After their kiss, Yo-woon admits he still needs time to sort through his feelings and figure things out for sure. Jigu can barely handle hearing that, and wondered how long he's expected to wait. Yowon even tells him not to wait around forever, and says it's okay if he ends up liking someone else someday. Jigu immediately hugs him, and promises he'll do his best to become exactly Yowon's type. In exchange, he asks Yowon to stop seeing anyone else. But Yowon wasn't seeing anyone. Jigu is already the only one. Later, back in his apartment, Jigu collapses on the couch after replaying the kiss over and over in his mind. After something like that, he can't believe Yowon still says he needs more time to think. By the time Yowon finally decides, Jigu jokes that he'll probably already be 6 feet under. The next morning, Jigu wakes up restless, wondering how much longer Yowon plans to think things over. He questioned if Yowon really meant it when he said he was the only one. Surely he must have told his slaves by now. Remembering his promise to match Yowon's preferences, Jigu decides to do some research online. Unfortunately, what he discovers completely overwhelms him. He's never even been beaten by his mother before, so imagining certain things with Yowon is way too much for him to process. Right then, Yowon suddenly appears at his door, wishing him a Merry Christmas. Realizing they've somehow never exchanged numbers before, Yowon hands over his phone so Jigu can save his contact. Apparently, Yowon spent the entire morning trying to find him. That single fact nearly makes Jigu explode with happiness. Since neither of them has plans for the evening, Yowon casually suggests having dinner together at home. Jigu asks whether he's only doing this because he feels bad for him, but Yowon says that isn't it at all. Even so, he admits he still needs more time to think about their relationship. Jigu hates how calm and collected Yowon seems compared to him. It feels like he's the only one losing his mind over everything, but Yowon quietly assures him that he cares too. And hearing that gives Jigu butterflies instantly. After dinner, Jigu feels completely euphoric. He can barely even remember what they talked about because he was too busy being happy just spending time together. His cat came over meowing. Yoon Fluffkins was so clingy on Yowon, Jigu got a little jealous. Later that night, Yowon texts him and tells him to save his number properly. Jigu debates adding a heart beside Yowon's name, but gets too embarrassed and settles for just the name alone. Yowon wishes him good night and says he's looking forward to seeing him at the pool tomorrow. That thought alone leaves him flush. He imagined Yowon coming up to him poolside saying, "I'm bored. Let's get out of here." They head to the shower. He tells his Hyung they can't hear, but Yowon knew he was already ready. The thought left Jigu in a drooling daze. As he lies there, imagining tomorrow, another text appears telling him to sleep well. Jigu immediately lights up with joy and kisses his phone without thinking. Just yesterday, he regretted confessing. Now, he's genuinely glad he did. Their relationship has already started changing in ways neither of them can undo anymore. Another day in Illusion, Yowon dies repeatedly to a raid boss and starts researching better builds to maximize his gear. During his search, he discovers the option to marry another player in-game, which grants both character bonus stats. Immediately, he brings it up to Jigu. The suggestion alone leaves Jigu flustered, but he teases Yowon by saying they can't get married yet, because Yowon doesn't even know who he really is. Even if it's just a game, Jigu still considers it a part of his real life too. Still, Jigu says he'd make an exception if they meet in real life first. Since Yowon has no free time lately, he simply tells Jigu to let him know if he changes his mind. At the pool, Yowon asks Jigu whether he's met up with someone he only knew online. Jigu immediately grabs his hand and leans in close, insisting that he doesn't use dating apps or meet random people from the internet. In fact, there's nobody he wants to meet except Yowon. Those words leave Yowon completely flustered. Luckily, no one else is around to witness the shameless flirting happening between them. Yowon quickly clarifies that he meant something more casual, like meeting an online gaming friend. He explains the situation, adding that it isn't a big deal since the person wanting to meet him is a guy. Unfortunately, that explanation only makes things worse because Jigu is also a guy who likes him. Jigu asks what this online friend is like, and Yowon unknowingly describes Jigu himself as sweet and cute, leaving him blushing hard. Jigu encourages him to meet up with the person, though Yowon still isn't sure what they'd even do. Jigu casually suggests going out to eat. Afterward, Yowon asks why Jigu skipped the pool the other day, and admits he was worried. Jigu is too busy having a session and imagining himself doing bad things with Yowon. Instantly flustered, Jigu practically throws himself into the water to avoid answering. Back in Illusion, Yowon continues pestering Jigu about marrying him in-game. Jigu keeps insisting that everything would be solved if they simply met in person already. At this point, Jigu is practically dying to reveal he's the same person both online and in real life. Still, he worries about how Yoon might react. After finishing a dungeon, Jigu asks when Yoon thinks he'll finally be emotionally ready for a meetup. Unfortunately, Yoon gets distracted by Meowie before logging off, leaving the conversation unfinished. At this point, Jigu is seconds away from sending Meowie 6 feet underground. Later at work, Yoon watches his coworkers head out to the cafe while he remains stuck in the office. He starts daydreaming about finally taking a vacation this summer after missing out last year. Even a simple beach trip sounds perfect. He imagines warm sand, ocean waves, and sunsets by the sea. And somehow, Jigu appears in the fantasy too. Yoon quickly tries to shake the thought away, wondering why Jigu popped up into his head in the first place. It's not like he dislikes the idea of traveling together, but a trip alone with Jigu still feels like a lot. Despite the slow progress, their relationship has definitely changed over the last half year. Every weekend, Yoon clears his schedule just to spend time with Jigu. From Saturday mornings to late evenings, they stay together talking about absolutely nothing. Eventually, movie nights become their routine. One evening, the movie is so boring that Yoon closes his eyes for a moment. Taking advantage of the opportunity, Jigu steals several quick kisses while pretending nothing happened. The problem is, Yoon is fully awake the entire time, and somehow he finds Jigu unbearably cute for doing something so ridiculous. After that, Jigu intentionally starts choosing boring documentaries just so Yoon will fall asleep again. But during all those tiny stolen kisses, Yoon begins realizing he wants more than fleeting little touches. Later, after swim lessons, Jigu asks what Yoon usually thinks whenever he looks at him. Yoon isn't entirely sure, but right now, he knows one thing for certain. He wants to hold Jigu's hand without caring who sees. So when the crosswalk signal changes, Yoon quietly grabs his hand while they cross the street together. Something so simple suddenly feels incredibly special, though he's still uncertain about many things. Yoon finally thinks he might actually like Jigu too. Then out of nowhere, Jigu blurts out that he has fantasies about being tied up and spanked. Yoon is completely stunned. Yoon admits that Jigu is undeniably handsome, but that alone isn't enough to satisfy Jigu's impatience. Ever since Jigu secretly kissed him, Yoon should have realized how serious his feelings were. Still, he has no idea how to respond to Jigu's increasingly intense desires. Jigu then declares that he believes in premarital chastity and promises not to do anything too serious until they start dating officially. At the same time, he warns Yoon not to mess with him unless his feelings are genuine. Although, Jigu also casually admits he still wouldn't mind being spanked by him. Ayo. Despite the insanity of the conversation, Yoon still finds him adorable. He suggests that the two of them simply figure things out together at their own pace. Overjoyed, Jigu happily agrees. To him, this basically confirms that Yoon might really be okay with loving another man. Back at home, Yoon searches online and immediately becomes overwhelmed by the things he finds. More than anything, he genuinely can't understand how Jigu became interested in any of this. Later, in Illusion, Jigu once again asks about meeting in person. To avoid the topic, Yoon proposes a bet involving whether the office air conditioner gets fixed within a week. The loser has to grant the winner's wish. Confident he'll win, Yoon swears he'll use this chance to permanently shut down the meetup conversation. Unfortunately for him, the repairman arrives almost immediately. Yoon loses, and Jigu's wish is simple. He wants Yoon to come over this weekend. After setting plans for the weekend, Yoon starts heading home when it suddenly begins raining. In the distance, he spots Jigu and decides to surprise him from behind. But as he gets closer, he notices Jigu furiously typing on his phone. Then, Yoon catches a glimpse of the screen. It's the exact same messages he's been receiving from his online guildmate. Everything suddenly clicks. Jigu and his online friend are the same person. Completely losing it, Yoon grabs Jigu by the head and starts mercilessly teasing him, demanding he repeat all those embarrassing pet names again. Jigu hurriedly explains that he genuinely didn't realize it was Yoon at first, and originally thought Yoon was some creepy stalker. Somehow, he's managed to hide the truth from him for an entire year. Even so, Yoon has already cleared up his schedule for the weekend, because the truth is simple. He likes Jigu, and after all this chaos, the two of them officially start dating. Back in his room, Yoon feels completely flush, replaying everything that just happened. Even after showering, he still can't fully process the fact that Jigu and his online game partner were the same person all along. Not long later, Jigu nervously appears at his door. Since they're officially dating now, he wonders whether he should still call Yo-woon Hyung. Yo-woon doesn't understand why Jigu is making such a huge deal out of titles, and jokingly suggests he keep calling him Babe, like he always does in game. Shockingly, Jigu admits he'd rather call him Master. Unfortunately, he's far too embarrassed to ever say it out loud. When Jigu admits defeat, Yo-woon bursts into laughter. Later, while drying Yo-woon's hair, Jigu gets asked why he hid the truth for an entire year. Yo-woon says he isn't truly angry, but it still hurts knowing Jigu kept something so simple hidden for that long. The moment Jigu looks like he's about to cry, Yo-woon immediately pulls him into a kiss. After making out, and man, did they go crazy. Hopefully you guys enjoy a few of these panels. Jigu suddenly brings up an old misunderstanding involving someone who once referred to Yo-woon as Master over the phone. Yo-woon quickly explains that the person actually called him assistant manager, not master. Another misunderstanding. Apparently, Jigu had been worrying this entire time. Yo-woon also explains that a friend jokingly calls him master sometimes, but it's nothing serious. As the misunderstandings unravel one by one, Jigu suddenly starts crying from sheer embarrassment. Okay, so in this chapter, it's like spanking and stuff. Obviously, I'm not going to show it or I'll get axed by YouTube. But just know Jigu is getting whacked by a paddle. Jigu finally admits he hates pain more than anything else. The only reason he tried enduring everything before was because of Yo-woon. In reality, neither of them is actually into the extreme things they thought the other person liked. Watching Jigu struggle so badly, Yo-woon suddenly realizes something shocking about himself too. He's definitely the bottom. Afterward, Jigu becomes painfully shy around him. Yo-woon assumes he'll recover eventually since they're dating now anyway. Surely spending the night together will naturally lead to more intimacy eventually. But after showering, Yo-woon is stunned to hear Jigu announce he's going home. Apparently, he needs to feed his cat in the morning. Yo-woon cannot believe he just lost to a cat. Deep down, he also feels weirdly disappointed that Jigu didn't make a move on him. The next morning, he decides to visit Jigu and bring something along. Meanwhile, Jigu spends the entire night replaying yesterday in his head and deciding it was simultaneously the best and worst night of his life. He's so embarrassed he barely knows how to face Yo-woon anymore. Right then, Yo-woon suddenly appears at his door. Walking right into the apartment, he casually hands Jigu a seat cushion as a gift to help with the pain, before telling him to hurry up and wash his face so they can log into the game together. When Jigu finally exits the bathroom, he finds Yo-woon waiting by the door with a calm expression and a beautiful smile. Then, Yo-woon casually proposes marriage. In-game, of course. After all, Jigu promised he'd marry him once they met in person. Realizing what he means, Jigu immediately agrees, though his heart nearly explodes anyway. Yo-woon then asks how Jigu can act so confident and flirty online while becoming completely speechless face-to-face. He jokingly calls him a keyboard warrior, which immediately hits a nerve and sends Jigu into denial. The two log into Illusion together, and Yo-woon becomes even more convinced that Jigu and his online persona are exactly the same adorable person. Excitedly, Yo-woon announces to everyone that he's about to get married in-game, and invites all his friends to come collect buffs from the wedding. Jigu immediately becomes jealous after noticing he's somehow the only person missing from Yo-woon's friend list. Yo-woon agrees to add him on one condition. Jigu has to say, "Add me, babe." Unfortunately, Jigu's far too shy to actually say it. Watching Yo-woon openly act cute with Jigu shocks everyone online. Then, just as Jigu gets down on one knee to propose in-game, something suddenly clicks inside Yo-woon's head. The creepy stalker Jigu complained about all this time was actually him. The moment Yo-woon realizes this, he becomes furious, thinking about all the times Jigu avoided him because of the misunderstanding. Pretending to be thirsty, Yo-woon sends Jigu away to grab water. While he's gone, Yo-woon sneaks onto Jigu's account and types, "I'm getting married to Master," humiliating him in front of everyone. By the time Jigu returns, it's already too late. Soon after, they head towards the wedding venue, only to discover all the guests are wearing cloaks. Everyone except Jigu, of course. At this point, it practically feels like the wedding exists purely to embarrass him. Later, while checking character builds, Jigu insists the marriage buff alone isn't enough and starts obsessing over optimizing every skill. Meanwhile, Yo-woon casually distracts him by admitting he isn't wearing underwear. Jigu nearly short-circuits on the spot. About a week later, Yo-woon visits Jigu at the cafe for an iced coffee. He notices Jigu hasn't been showing up at the pool much lately, but Jigu explains that this time of year is especially busy. As Yo-woon leaves with his drink, he catches himself thinking about how Jigu's lips always twitch into a smile whenever they see each other. Jigu seriously likes him way too much. Yowon had secretly worried Jigu would constantly pester him after their first experience together. But instead, Jigu seems determined to pretend it never happened. Or at least, that's what Yowon thinks. Back in Illusion, Jigu suddenly disconnects and reconnects multiple times while they're hanging out. After it happens repeatedly, Yowon becomes certain there's something wrong. Jigu is way too easy to read. Jigu tries blaming his constant disconnects on his cat, but Yowon isn't buying it for a second. The truth is much more embarrassing. Jigu's terrified Yowon will break up with him for being inexperienced. After all, he wasn't prepared at all that day. Even so, he wants to become someone dependable, not just a cute younger boyfriend, but someone Yowon can truly rely on. Determined to mature, Jigu decides to seriously study for next time. Later, Yowon invites him on a beach trip since he's finally taking time off work. Since they'll probably stay overnight, Jigu awkwardly asks whether they'll do it again. Yowon immediately says he still isn't quite ready. Meanwhile, after all his studying, Jigu is very ready for practical experience. Hearing that, Yowon storms over to Jigu's apartment and angrily demands he come outside immediately. Of course, the moment they're face to face, Jigu becomes too shy to say any of the bold things he said earlier, and Yowon starts teasing him for it. Still, Jigu gathers his courage and asks for another chance, promising he'll do better next time. Maybe he'll even make Yowon cry from pleasure. Before Yowon can properly react, Jigu suddenly kisses him and slams the door shut in embarrassment. Later, the two begin planning their beach trip together. Yowon books an ocean view resort with a huge pool, while Jigu takes responsibility for finding restaurants. Unfortunately, Jigu somehow finds more dessert cafes than actual places to eat. Still, Yowon doesn't really mind as long as Jigu is happy. A few days later, Yowon's younger sister, Lee Seo, drops off a car for him. Bro, I'm crying. It's just Yowon with a ponytail. Curious, she asks who he's going on vacation with, but Yowon refuses to answer. She manages to squeeze some money out of him before leaving. On her way out, she runs into Jigu, who instantly freezes and looks terrifyingly serious without saying a single word. Once she leaves, Jigu completely panics and frantically asks who she is. The moment he hears it was Yowon's little sister, Jigu goes speechless. Feeling guilty about the awkward encounter, Jigu asks Yowon to text his sister and apologize on his behalf. But, in exchange, Yowon asks for Jigu's apartment door code. Finally, the day of the trip arrives. Jigu appears at Yowon's apartment, carrying luggage and trying desperately to avoid being seen by his older brother before leaving. When Jigu receives a phone call, Yowon notices the annoyed expression on his face. That look used to always be directed at him. Now, whenever Jigu looks at Yowon, he's only ever awkward, shy, and flustered. Realizing that makes Yowon understand just how special he's become to Jigu. Since this is Jigu's first real trip since high school, he's incredibly excited. Everything feels even better because he's traveling with the person he loves. Meanwhile, Yowon mostly wants to bury Jigu in the sand at the beach. The moment they arrive at the resort, Yowon rushes towards the water and dips his feet into the ocean. Jigu joins him soon after, but suddenly freaks out when something brushes under his foot. It turns out just to be seaweed. Using the opportunity, Yowon quickly snaps a picture of Jigu panicking, leaving him horribly embarrassed. Yowon refuses to show him the photo and casually says Jigu can take pictures of him too if he wants. Desperate to see the image, Jigu threatens to kiss him right there in public. At this point, the two of them really never miss an opportunity to flirt. Of course, Yowon isn't intimidated at all because he knows Jigu is mostly all bark and no bite. As they continue fooling around, Jigu realizes he's never actually liked the ocean much before, but somehow, being here with Yowon makes him enjoy it. Even if Jigu literally buried him in sand, watching Yowon laugh while taking pictures of him, Jigu remembers how kind Yowon has always been. Back then, he thought Yowon was just strange. Now, he's grateful that he's his. After dinner, the two return to their room. Sitting together on the couch, Jigu admires the beautiful sunset outside and imagines spending even more romantic moments with Yowon once the mood becomes right. Unfortunately for him, the second Yowon finishes showering, he notices sand still stuck in Jigu's hair and immediately sends him to clean up too. By the time Jigu comes back from the shower, Yowon is already half asleep. Jigu nearly dies from frustration, but comforts himself knowing there's still tomorrow. As Jigu falls asleep that night, Yoon quietly opens his eyes. He was pretending the entire time. Sneaking over to his bag, Yoon pulls out a ring and carefully slips it onto Jigu's finger while he sleeps. Then, he grabs Jigu's phone and scrolls through the photos inside. Most of them are pictures of himself, and in every single one, Yoon looks genuinely happy. Seeing that makes his chest tighten warmly. A little later, fireworks suddenly explode outside and wake Jigu up. The two head outdoors together and find a quiet place to watch the lights in the night sky. Then, Yoon asks if Jigu has noticed anything different. Completely clueless, Jigu stares blankly at him until Yoon reveals the matching ring on his own hand. Only then does Jigu finally notice the ring already sitting on his finger. Shocked, speechless, Jigu watches as Yoon asks him to put the second ring on him properly. Yoon admits that he feels like he's always receiving things from Jigu, so he wanted to give something back in return. That's why he bought the rings. Now Jigu has something to remember this trip by too. It's also the very first time Yoon has ever worn couple rings with someone. Thinking back to their first kiss, Yoon remembers how scared and uncertain he felt back then. At the time, he didn't understand why he wanted to stay beside Jigu so badly, but now he finally does. Yoon apologizes for taking so long to figure out his feelings, and thanks Jigu for patiently waiting for him all this time. Rather than attaching meaning to anniversaries, Yoon prefers moments like this instead. Every time Jigu sees fireworks, the ocean, or the ring on his hand, he wants him to remember this exact moment forever. Early the next morning, Yoon tries waking Jigu up so they can watch the sunrise together, but Jigu is completely exhausted. When Yoon touches him, he realizes Jigu has a fever. After giving him medicine, the two simply curl back up and go to sleep. Later, when the sun finally rises, Jigu feels much better and barely remembers anything from earlier. Yoon suggests driving along the coast after breakfast and stopping by dessert shops so Jigu can buy as many sweets as he wants. The weather is beautiful. Sunlight sparkles across the ocean, and Yoon feels completely at peace. At this point, both of them already know they want to come back here together again next year. Their lives continue forward in the simplest, most ordinary way possible. But because they treasure each other so deeply, even ordinary mornings become something precious. And this is only one ordinary morning out of the countless more they'll spend together for the rest of their lives. Aww, what a nice little MMO kind of romance story. As an avid gamer myself, I've always enjoyed gamer romance plots. Even though I think a lot of the plot itself was a lot of nothing, because what even really happened? They met online and they were neighbors. The story itself is mostly fluff, but I think visually the artwork was enjoyable. What do you guys think? Subscribe for more BL. But for now, watch this next video. It's me, Comfy T. I'll see you all in the next one.